Hello folks, this is Roger Daniel Alcocer here for the Magnificent World of Toys. So, year 4 here at the Magnificent World of Toys had absolutely no shortage of amazing collectors, amazing artists, amazing toy makers, and we even managed to capture a pretty prolific filmmaker. All of these individuals have breathtaking collections ranging from jumbo machinder, diecast super robots, vintage toys, and all types of other odds and ends. So, I hope you could sit back, relax, take a trip with us back to our year 4, watch to the very end, and also check in on our comments. Let us know if you saw something you liked, if you discovered something new, and don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and please share to help us grow here on the Magnificent World of Toys. Once again, my name is Roger Daniel Alcocer. May those who play never gray. Hope you enjoy the show. Thank you so much.
A toy expert is someone that has spent their entire life dedicated to the knowledge of toys. And I have done that. I have spent every waking moment. I have read every article. I have looked at every toy. I have shopped for every toy. I have loved toys, and I have made that part of my life. My name is Scott Zillner, and I am a toy expert. I collect a wide assortment of toys. Obviously, I'm a robot guy, but not just robots. I love G.I. Joe. I love Star Wars. I love Inhumanoids. I love Mask. I'm definitely an 80s toy guy, but with the way and how hard it is to get modern toys, I find much more excitement in trying to hunt down vintage toys. I don't want a toy that you can just go online and pre-order and be done with. I want a toy that you have to go to shop after shop. You have to go to a convention. You have to dig through buckets, and then you find that gold Battlestar Galactica Cylon or old Bob from Black Hole. When you find those type of really hard to find toys, that's much more excitement. It's much more fulfillment to the hunt, and to me, it brings a lot more joy. Sometimes I even find toys I didn't even know existed. Like, what is this? How did I not know this existed? Well, it's going home with me now. It's part of my collection, and that's how you get those really interesting toys. Like many collectors, I collect for the presence of nostalgia. How does this toy make me feel? And that comes back to the point when we were kids, there was no overbearing rent or COVID or any kind of stress on our lives. It was just joy. Joy to get home at 3 o'clock and watch cartoons. Joy at Christmas or birthdays to open up that gift or to save your allowance and buy that toy that you wanted. And so now as adults, we search for that little bit of happiness that we may not get in our normal lives, and that comes from collecting toys or repurchasing that little bit of childhood that we missed. I really was that kid that collected his toys when he got his toys. I was so much of a toy guy even as a kid. I didn't want boxes to be thrown away. I wanted to keep my boxes. And there's a great story of Christmas at my grandma's house where we packed the car up and there wasn't room for Scott's boxes. And so I had grandma send me the boxes home. Here I am, 10 or 12-year-old kid, and I wanted my boxes to my robots, to my G.I. Joes. I didn't want to leave those behind. And she had to go to the post office and they're like, "What's in this box?" She's like, "Boxes." "What do you mean boxes?" "My grandson has to have his boxes." And they didn't believe her. They made her open the box up to show her there was just boxes in this box. They couldn't believe a kid wanted to keep his boxes. So even at an early age, I was already a collector at heart. As you grow, as a collector, what you may have collected at first isn't as hot as what you collect later on. And some people are solid collectors. Like, I only do Redline Hot Wheels, or I only collect Godzilla. And I've never been that dude. I've always been able to, like, I want G.I. Joes, I want Transformers, I want Godzilla, I want Robotech, I want weird Japanese toys. I will buy toys, I don't even know what it is. And I'm just like, that just looks cool. I'm taking it home. I'm keeping that toy. So as you collect, what you want can change, but what doesn't change is that feeling of drive for the hunt, to collect, to buy stuff that you find really interesting, and you put it on display. At a certain point, you take that display down and you change it up for a new one, and that's fun. That's all part of the hobby. I actually set up to sell toys when I was 14. I didn't even have a car. I couldn't drive, obviously I was 14. But I had my mom drive me to a convention. I had bought a table. I unpacked my boxes of comics and toys. She drove off. I set up at the show. I sold stuff. I think I made $62 that day, which was a lot of money at that point. And called her on a payphone and put my boxes on the street and waited for her to pick me up. At 14, I was already making money buying and selling toys. Even before that, I would set up a table on the street because I had seen, lemonade stands, and I'm like, oh, you can sell toys that way too. And set up some old toys and would just sit on the street and wait for cars to drive by and rip me off for my toys. That's what really happened. But as I moved to LA in 2006, I did my first event with a partner called Monsters Among Robots. And then later on in 2008, I acquired Power Morphicon, which is the Power Ranger convention. And then in 2010, I did my first Power Morphicon show, which has led to multiple events over the years. That show is every 2 years. And now I run anywhere from 8 to 12 shows a year. I get asked a lot, why do I run shows? And it's like, oh, is that just a moneymaker? I'm like, oh no, you lose money on shows. Several of my shows, I lost money for years until it started to make a profit, and I knew that going in. Robo Toy Fest was a vanity show, and a vanity show means I'm doing that show just because I want to do a show about robots. I wanted to do a robot-led toy show, and I did it free for 3 years. You could come in, there was no admission, I charged the vendors, and my table sales paid for the event. And we grew it and grew it and grew it until it became a self-sufficient show. A lot of people think, oh, shows are just easy, I'm gonna go and throw a convention. It's really hard. You actually have got to be out there for a while. You have to have a reputation. You have to have a good promotions. You gotta be able to bring people in the door. You gotta be able to get the good vendors that the people come in the door to see. You gotta get the good guests. And if it all works out, everybody has a good time. And that's what I try to do with my event. I want to say for the most part, I do that really well. When you come to say, Scott, what is your favorite toy line? It can be really hard when you collect a lot of stuff like I do. I would have to say though, G.I. Joe 3 3/4 Real American Hero is my absolute favorite toy line. I have an entire room dedicated just to G.I. Joe. I have this room dedicated to robots and arcade machines. But yeah, G.I. Joe 3 3/4 was the toy line that really stuck me into toys. There is no era better for toys than the 1980s. Reagan lifted the law on doing hour-long commercials for toys. That gave us a boom for the advertising industries to give us G.I. Joe the cartoon, Transformers the cartoon, Sunbow making hour-long commercials. They had 2 G.I. Joe and Transformers back to back, that's an hour, of nothing but a commercial for toys that other toy companies would then have to pay to put their commercial for toys in a toy commercial. That's how it worked. And because of that, toys made a spectacular boom throughout the 80s. And in fact, even today, we're still living off of the wings of what 80 toys were. The most biggest, best toys are still the toys that were big in the 80s. You will never see the boom and interest in toys like you did in the 80s and 90s because the market has moved. You no longer have only a small block for cartoons. Their cartoons are on all the time. You can watch cartoons 24 hours a day. In fact, I do. But with that, kids are now spread out through so many different things. They're not watching cartoons, they're watching memes, they're watching TikTok videos, they're watching YouTube videos, they're watching this. With that, the super toy lines being giant are gone. LOL dolls or mystery boxes or that kind of stuff is the constant evolution of what toys are now will never be what they were. And because of that, they'll never be made in those kind of numbers. People are like, oh yeah, there's going to be a ton of those toys. Every toy made today is literally nowhere near the least produced toy in the 80s. The least produced toy in the 80s is the best-selling toy today by the amount of numbers of toys they made because the toys have dropped off. People buy video games. People buy poop now. Poop toys are really popular with kids. So will we ever see that boom again? No. It's always going to be a decline. That's why most toys are made for collectors, because collectors are the older generation that played with toys. The newer generation doesn't care. They really don't. They want to have fun for 5 seconds and go on to something else. And so it's a lost era. We're going to be those old guys at a 10 show looking for 10 toys because that was the toys they loved. We love plastic. The next generation, they like TikTok videos. What are the most popular or most valuable toys in my collection? I certainly have some toys that I won't even say I have because those are the toys that are just like, what? How do you have one of those? Where did you get one of those toys from? Like sometimes certain toys you may have in a collection and they're not even something you want to even mention because they are in that super rare grail thing that you don't want to get mugged for. But you shouldn't collect toys for what they're worth. You should collect toys for what they mean to you. I'll tell you one thing that I have that it took me forever to get, and that's this guy right here. Gigantor or Tetsujin 28 Jumbo Machinder. Jumbo Machinders themselves are a toy that I started collecting in 1979 at Christmas 1980. It's a very, very hard toy to collect because a lot of them were only available in Japan. The Shogun Warriors were available here in the States, but to get the hard ones, you had to go to Japan to get them. And if you notice, I only have a knockoff Vanguard Ace. I don't have a real Vanguard Ace because he's like $16,000. Like I can buy a car or a Jumbo Machinder. I bought a new car. Yeah, that's how it went, yeah. There's always stuff you're actively looking for, but I don't want to go on eBay and just hunt for something on there and buy it. I have to find it in the wild. I have to go out to a convention, I have to go out to a show, I have to go out to a swap meet, and I have to find it that way. So there's stuff I do want, there's a lot of stuff I want. I just have to stumble across it and then I buy it. People often say, well, is there a point that you're going to stop? And I would say, if I don't find joy in it anymore, then I don't need to buy those toys anymore and buy toys that I do find joy in buying. So do I swap around a lot? Yes. One year I may be all about Transformers, and then I'm all about G.I. Joe, and then I'm all about Jumbo Machinders, and that's kind of what keeps it alive for me as a collector, is that I can go and bounce from one favorite to another favorite and keep collecting rather than just say, okay, I've got all 424 Battle Beasts, I'm done. And I don't want to be that guy that says I'm done. I always want to be reaching for something new, something fun, and go like, hey, you know what? Now I'm into Rock Lords. Let's find those Rock Lords and buy Rock Lords until I'm happy with it, and then go to Jason the Wheeled Warriors and that's what makes it fun and exciting. And once you start going down those deep dives, you realize like, oh wow, there's this one dino rider that only one guy had this one mask, and I gotta find that dude. And that's what's fun about toy collecting, is once you get into that groove, you're like, man, I gotta keep hunting till I find that one dude I need. And it was only available in Italy for a small time, and it was a mail order. You'll find it if you try hard enough. You can of course find more about me. I do run a toy news site called toy-wizards.com. Toy-wizards.com. Every day I post new toy news on that site. We have a YouTube page for Toy Wizards. You can also find me on Instagram, Scott Zillner. I run a bunch of conventions. Any of those conventions like Robo Toy Fest or Power Morphicon, you click on them, they'll lead you to all the other events that I do. I'm Scott Zillner, and you should collect toys as long as it's fun for you.
Just having this collection is so inspiring in terms of, without even consciously realizing it, having all that reference material physically nearby and being able to kind of take a break, look at all of it and see thousands of ideas that have come to final decisions and are sitting right in front of you, you kind of just feel like okay, I think I know what to do. There's so many great templates and references here, and I love that part about the collection. There's another part where just, I don't know, as a fan, it's so cool to feel like you have like a representation or a piece of the thing that you're into. It says a lot, I think, about a lot of collectors. What they're into is always reflected by these great collections, whether it's, you know, the characters or the universe or a theme, or, you know, even just going for like something different. There's always so many cool reasons, and I feel like that's kind of what brings me to the table too. I'm like, I like a bunch of different stuff. I can have it all in one place, and seeing it definitely geeks me out, and it's really fun to share because I think it makes people feel the same way when they see it. Hi, I'm Phil Gonzalez. I am an artist. I've been doing digital art for a really long time. 20 years of that has probably been in the video game industry, and I am a total hobbyist for several different things. I love to build models, collect figures, do art in my spare time, and play a lot of games. So that's kind of me. For work, I'm currently working for video game companies, and what I've been doing the past 20 years is usually creating digital artwork specifically. So that means getting into programs like Photoshop, 3D model programs, and generating art for games, whether that's a 3D model, a texture, or some other kind of game asset. I've played a lot of games for a long time, and when I was young, I learned how to mod games and start getting my own artwork in the game, and that's really driven a ton of what I do now, is just learning how to make different things, getting different ideas interpreted into 3D, and trying my best to make really cool interactive art. When I got started as an artist, I was like a really little kid. I grew up on a farm, and there was tons of animals and tractors and stuff like that, and just inspired the heck out of me. And when the weather is bad on the farm and it's raining, you're usually stuck indoors. So when I would be indoors during these times, I would be reading a ton of books, and I got into Lord of the Rings, Dune, started reading a ton of comic books, and really started drawing a lot of the stuff that was influenced me in my spare time. Yeah, I've been more or less just messing around with it since I was a little kid, and now I guess I've done it long enough I can get paid to do it, and it supports me, and I've lucked out that I got to do it this long. I'm really still like big on paper and pen. Like, I have a clipboard full of printer paper and Bic pens, which is always like my baseline go-to. I don't know why pencil, I just don't mess with it. It's just like, let's commit, let's go all in on pen. When I get from the sketching phase, usually I am either in Photoshop and translate my 2D drawing skills on paper to something digital and have a lot more control over the final graphical result. If I'm not drawing on the computer, I'm usually then making 3D in a similar sense, making artwork digitally, but making it from several different angles, looking at things in a more interactive sense in terms of I'm going to need to put this 3D model, once I'm done making it in a program, into another program like a video game engines, and make sure that the artwork I'm making is actually a functional game art asset. It's so amazing to see that cumulative knowledge, energy, talent, expertise result in something that actually exists, whether it's an image or an object. And to me that is so fascinating, because you can look at the things other people are making, if they're sculpting, if they're drawing, and you might have similar influences, but the end result can be completely different. And I love that. I love that people can have the same idea and we still get different results. And that's what's so inspiring about creative minds, is we're all seeing the same things. We're coming up with different ways to make something out of those ideas. And when we share them, that's when I feel like there's that connection. There's that like, oh, we all see it now. And I love that part of making anything. In terms of influences, Frank Frazetta, James Bama, McGinnis, there's so many just amazing people who are painting not only book covers, but the covers to the movies I was watching, the covers to the packaging I was buying, whether it was a video game or a toy. Just these amazing guys who could render, and that blew my mind, that you could make something completely fantastical and made up look real. I started getting into Marvel and DC Comics, but Image started doing stuff where those guys were deliberately breaking out of their creative boundaries and really ripping and tearing into what they wanted to do. And I started looking into a lot of what Dark Horse was publishing and got really, really deep into Mignola, Hellboy, Jeff Darrow, what he did on Hard Boiled, Frank Miller's Sin City work, and that really made me go, I need to level up because I want to be that good in my own personal work. That's what inspires me majorly on an art front. On a personal front, I've had the fortune of working with a few people who are just amazing fabricators, developers, and workers. My dad is one of them, who's worked in construction his whole life, and he got me in spots where I worked with other people who were also extremely technical and engineering minded. I got to meet people from my parents who were animators and working creative people who showed me that, like, you know, there's a lot of technical work that goes into making this, but that's where you get to learn the skills that allow you to make something more interesting, fun, and creative. And part of my collecting journey, I think around the time, like late 90s, I was going to San Jose a lot, where the Gundam merchandise was really starting to come over stateside, and a lot of the model kits that were being made just geeked me out. I've built model kits off and on, cars and stuff like that, but I think the Bandai level of kit building really just got me at another level of motivation and inspiration for model making and minis. When I was in middle school, a friend of mine showed me a rule book for Games Workshop for the first time, and it blew my mind. I was like, this is the coolest. I just read Lord of the Rings. Everything was just like the nines. They painted it. They'd taken great pictures of it. It was an awesome, polished like rule book, and that had always been kind of like lingering in my mind. I'm like, one day when I get my collecting life together, I want to try this. I want to get into this hobby. I want to get good at it. I've probably been working at this for about 10 years, just learning different ways to paint, learning different ways to build, getting results kind of the way I want them, and that's what's going on here. I get these things spun up, and I think this batch here I've probably been working on for 3 months, but it's a really good hobby. It gets me off the computer. It gets me doing stuff with my hands, and traditionally, again, I really enjoy it. I collect a lot of toys. Right now I'm collecting a lot more miniature-based stuff, but it's generally action figures, miniatures, sometimes games, and then art books, and every now and then a statue. When I was a kid, I'd be playing outside and like it was dinosaurs. Like I was just like, give me dinosaurs. And I was like a little kid, and I knew all their names, and if there was a species or a type of dinosaur I didn't have, I'm like, yo, I need that Styracosaurus over here. My grandparents, who being from San Jose and they had a lot more just cool collectible stuff to spoil their grandkid with, they saw this and they're like, oh, you'll probably love this. And they got me into Dino Riders. And the way they did that, they were just like, we'll just buy almost all of them. And as a kid, you're like, ah! Little did I know, like, that would totally put a bug in my like psyche. And I just love kind of like the completionist aspect to some collections, and having them kind of gathered up and be like, dude, like, I saw it in the magazine, I saw it in the Sears catalog or whatever, and like, there it is, I love it. So it started early. It got me pretty early on. I have Metal Gear Rex, which Metal Gear is one of my favorite games, and the Rex figure I have was just something I never thought would get made into like a figure, and when it did get translated, I was like, that geeks me out. I love having that in my collection. There's some stuff that's mostly nostalgic, like old metal lunchbox from Gremlins, which, you know, as a kid I thought that was the coolest thing I ever saw. So there's a few of those moments, but I think the best one is probably that Krulos down there from Dino Riders, because he came a long way to get here, and it's a funny story, and it just kind of like, I'm stoked to have it. If this all burned down, I could probably buy everything back, but I'd be bummed about some of the stuff that would be gone, and that would be one of them. There's some stuff in here that's like insanely costly, and it shouldn't be, but it never really bugs me. I guess it's just kind of like, in terms of value, I think like the vintage stuff that's still in great shape, like the Dino Riders, I'm super stoked to have that, because I feel other collectors, when they see it, like, there's always a pause if they recognize it, and I'm totally geeked because there's like, what? And it's such an OG thing, and now that it's aging and becoming even more nostalgic, when I get to share it with people, it's like, that's always the one that they're just like, what? And I love that. So the display cases are kind of, they're kind of something that happened because as I got into collecting more and more, and then move out and get my own career and job, like, a collection becomes kind of a weird thing I'm bringing around with me. And when I'm working in these offices with all these other creative folks in video games and cinematics, like, everyone has something near their desk, something cool that like they geeked out on and they collected. And you know, we're all doing this, and with my collection it just happened, like, you know, I have a Gundam collection over here, I have an Aliens and Predator collection, and sometimes they're on display at work, sometimes they're just in storage. It got to a point where there was so much stuff in storage, I was like, I wish I could either like offload this or have it all displayed. And that's when, you know, instead of collecting more, I'm like, I should really just hunker down and get some nice display cases, like, so they're not getting dusty all the time, so they're set up in a cool way, so they're lit, so you can see them all like in a larger scope next to each other. So like, never would have guessed that this is where it would have ended up, but having it like presented nice like this, totally love it. And if you can do it, like, I know a lot of folks who've also gotten their cases set up, and it makes them so happy. It becomes so much easier to share too. I am making stuff in 3D and 3D printing it, not really selling anything, but probably get my act together and throw some stuff on Thingiverse, because I love making like pieces to complement my collection, and kind of I'm heading in a direction that's inevitably going to be probably me making dioramas, because with the display cases, with the character figures and stuff, I feel like that's probably the next wormhole I'm going to go down to, is like plussing up my display so it's got cooler dioramas for the different themes or logo placards. I definitely think that's probably going to be the next itch that gets scratched. I do sell some graphic stuff on Redbubble, but it's mostly just like t-shirts and things that, you know, I'll kind of be in a wild mood and be like, I just want a shirt with this like logo on it, and I'll go off and make that, and I put it up online, so anyone who wants to also partake is welcome to. I'm on social media, please feel welcome to follow me. It's not that exciting, I'm just doing nerd stuff, but if you follow phil.gonzalez on Instagram, that's me, and from there you can find a link to my ArtStation page. You can find a link to I have another Instagram account, which is just like all my artwork, like drawings, models, stuff like that. So I post stuff randomly, and welcome to follow and drop a comment. I have a lot of side projects that I slowly work on them in my spare time. And I'm really hoping to have a couple of those in 20 years in a state where I'm just like enjoying maybe a sandbox game that's designed around stuff that no one else would make into a mainstream game, and it's just me farting around. I have a car I'm working on that I very much hope is done in 20 years. But more or less, I hope I'm still doing a lot of the same things. I really enjoy, the hobby of painting and doing model and miniature work. I hope I'm still doing that, and I'll fall as fails, knock on wood, hopefully still drawing and making art. So go from there.
I remember being really young and reading books and always just dreaming that I could make whatever scenery or characters was in the book three-dimensional. So I think when I found doing three-dimensional work later in life, it really spoke to me because it was like a play thing. It's like a play set. And then dollhouses are part of that. Miniatures, dollhouses, dioramas, all those things really fascinated me or really excited me or inspired me. I'm Brooke Weston. I am a taxidermy artist and sculptor and creator. I do consider myself an artist because I've been diligently doing it for so long. Some people say you shouldn't call yourself an artist because it's, I don't know, pretentious or something, but I think it's fine. I was really creative as a kid. I drew and I painted. I never had good skills, but I always had an imagination. So actually a lot of these concepts that are in my work now, I can see even in my pictures as like a teenager. Became an adult, really got involved with work and life and really didn't do art for a long time. Even though I was like, I wanted to for years, but I was pretty much just kind of numbed out from that part of myself. And I think around 2008, I kind of made some shifts in my career and my personal life, and I just started making kind of like dioramas within objects on and off, but the idea to do it with taxidermy kind of came to me. I always collected a lot of things, so I just took a taxidermy piece, cut it open, and that one happened to be hollow, which is actually very rare. So I put a dollhouse in it, and so that was like in 2008. So a long time now I've been doing work with taxidermy. I had a dollhouse when I was young. It was kind of funky. Then they made in the 80s the strawberry shortcake dollhouses and stuff that had all these incredible pieces in them, and I still draw inspiration from that stuff. It's so cool. I loved setting up little scenes when I was young, and I would like take photographs of them and with some of the dollhouse pieces and different painted backgrounds. So it's always been kind of a thing, and I grew up in kind of a rural area. I would go into the woods and build little scenes inside of trees and stuff. I was really fascinated with miniature worlds inside of things for as far back as I can remember. Then it translated into a lot of my drawings, and then eventually became three-dimensional here. But yeah, really inspired by toys, especially play sets, dioramas, all that stuff. I still love looking at even the new ones that come out because they're so cool. I grew up with hunting and taxidermy, so I've always kind of been around it and used to it, and watched my dad bring his animals to the taxidermist and have it done, and I've always loved it. I started building like a small collection just to decorate my house. Anybody that collects taxidermy or knows anything about it knows how many taxidermy mounts are out there that are completely destroyed, trashed, because they do break fairly easily. Back when I started this in 2008, you could buy beat up taxidermy head mounts for $40, which is absolutely impossible now, but because it's gotten more popular. So I think just because I had done this concept with dollhouses and dioramas, like I had done it in a mannequin when I was a teenager, so that concept was kind of always there with me. So it kind of just always stuck with me that that's like where my creative process always went was like building small worlds within things. So it kind of just was a natural thing that happened with the taxidermy. I did, I think 2 pieces, and I went into a gallery one day and a woman said, "Are you an artist?" Because I used to dress really wild. And I said, "I am." And I showed her some pictures and she said, "I'll give you a show next month." And I only had these 2 pieces. So I went and bought a whole bunch of taxidermy and just made a few pieces. They weren't that great, but the concept was created there. I mostly do dollhouse scale stuff now, but some of my older pieces have much smaller dioramas. So I cut out taxidermy and literally build a different environment inside of it. My larger pieces have full environments built around them, and I use a lot of my own made miniatures mixed with vintage and or other miniatures that I find. So it's, people ask me if I make everything inside. It's about everything that I touch that goes into my work. Could be a found object, but I manipulate it to give it my style, and or I'm making it from scratch out of who knows what. So they're highly detailed. My larger work that I'm most prolific in, each one takes me an extremely long time. And then I do smaller pieces with skulls and anthropomorphic pieces that is kind of a different world where I'm making an actual character out of the taxidermy itself. I am mostly completely self-taught. I'm a high school dropout with no college education. So I did, however, take a few junior high college courses in my hometown, and I actually learned some sculpting kind of basics there. So that's about the only teaching I've had, and of course now it's just YouTube videos and teaching myself. All of my work is made with plasters, resins. I often reinforce the insides of the taxidermy with mesh, plaster, 2-part epoxy clays. All of my skulls are real skulls, and then resin and 2-part epoxy clay. So a lot of the sculpting I do is with a Dremel or sanding after I've sculpted with clay and resin. Same goes for my large pieces, like my bases are made with plaster, 2-part epoxy clay, found objects, resin. So a lot of different materials. And a lot of the things I do, just there's no sense to it. It's just something I've completely come up with. I have an assistant. She does stuff for me and she's like, "Is there a YouTube video?" I go, "No, this is just some weird stuff I've come up with." So she helps me with a lot of the labor-intensive part of it. I mean, I was vegan when I started this, so I'm definitely never take for granted this was an animal at one point. I think it draws a lot of questions because we see taxidermy, we see it in its true form when actually it's just leather hide stretched over a form. It's interesting how offended people get by it when it's literally leather. But I always feel some respect for the animal, especially when I've worked on really large, like bears, or, you know, these are beautiful animals. And I do try to source taxidermy mounts that are beat up, that probably would be tossed. I spend sometimes hundreds of hours just repairing the piece itself. And I try to avoid things like recently taxidermied African animals, that kind of gross over, I don't know how to exactly articulate it, but, you know, over the top, in your face, trophy mount, modern day. A lot of my pieces are from the 70s and 80s or older. I don't know if there's ever been an ick factor. I grew up preparing animals for my father. I was a chef for a long time, so I have a lot of experience with flesh, but I really don't ever separate from the fact that it's an animal. I'm very aware and try my best to be really respectful. A lot of times you'll see the windows and the placement of things is covering up damage to the animal. So I'm kind of always working organically with the damage that's there. A lot of the pieces are at least old and have some damage that I use. I really want to entertain people through my work. That's why I like to work with detail, especially if somebody buys something. I want them to continually find new things about it. There's just endless layers of detail and information in each piece. Definitely, I have gotten a lot of hate. I've had I probably, in the time that I've done this, around 20 death threat emails or There's been times where pictures of my work have filtered into vegan chat rooms or Facebook groups, and it just starts spreading where I'll just start getting mass amounts of hate mail and nasty comments on my pictures. And I got one today. I had it for a while. I was like, oh, where did this come from? Somebody, telling me how disrespectful I am, telling me, why are you doing this? It's a whole, a whole barrage of different insults usually. A lot of it is really angry, and I always think it's interesting because I go, would they be reacting this way towards just some random person walking down the street with a leather purse that was literally killed to make that? It really fascinates me that people have such a cognitive dissonance. Well, I see it as an animal, so I must get angry. And I still also know in that the same time I am using dead animals, it is going to evoke a reaction, and I'm okay with that. Like, I really accept that that's going to happen, and I understand that people are going to have that reaction at times. But, I've had vegans buy my work, so I think it just depends on the person, really. I draw inspiration from kind of abstract areas of art. Like, I love seeing art in fairs or amusement parks or children's books. Like I said, play sets and toys are part of it for sure. Other dollhouse artists, miniature artists, and natural history museums are a huge source of inspiration to me. I mean, there's millions of artists that I love. I love classical art, I love modern art, but miniatures is kind of where I draw most of my inspiration. And fantasy. Just a few months ago, I sold a huge standing ram that I made into a white ghost ship. That one was really beautiful. Hundreds of hours put into it. It was a beautiful animal to start with. I really like having the opportunity with the full body animal to make a whole scene for it with the base. It goes into that whole playset thing where it's the whole scene. The head mounts are great, but those are the most fun and rewarding because it really makes me feel like I created a whole vision. I do most of my updates through Instagram. It's Brooke S. Weston on Instagram. I do TikTok, Brooke Weston without the S. And I do direct sales for a lot of my larger work. I have some work in a Mortal Machine Gallery in New Orleans right now. I will be doing Monsterpalooza in June. And then during the fall, I have quite a few shows, so you can always purchase my work through there. Larger work, direct sales, and then I do Etsy drops for a lot of my smaller work. And my Etsy is just Brooke S. Weston as well. For the last quite a few years, I've lived in my work areas. So I haven't had really a space to collect. I collected oddities and vintage toys and skulls for years. I had quite a collection, and as I've just worked towards making art my main thing, I've just had to scale down so much in my life. So I do look forward to a time where I can have a space and start my collections all over. People are like, don't you want to keep some of your art? I'm like, absolutely not. I have nowhere to put it. So
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm Bitter Squeaks on Instagram. I'm making shuttersome and sweet huggable friends for you or someone you love. I'm also the owner and curator of the Edward Mobley Estate and Museum here in Old World in Huntington Beach, California. I collect Edward Mobley toys designed by Edward Mobley for Aero Rubber, Sun Rubber, J.L. Prescott, basically every company that he designed for around the world. I used to collect antique bird taxidermy. A lot of it is created using arsenic, and so while I was pregnant, I freaked out and was like, I shouldn't be around this as a pregnant lady, and definitely my baby shouldn't be around it. So I sold my taxidermy collection, and I still wanted weird things, but I didn't know what those weird things were. So one day we were at Long Beach Swap Meet, and I found these really bizarre little elephants for $1. And I said, this is it. These are great. They're so bananas. They're coming home with me. So I took them home and washed them and found out there were 2 different colors and was like, this is amazing. They're so beautiful. I looked them up on eBay and was like, oh, there's some really good ones. And so I just started buying off eBay and Etsy. Then I had maybe 30. And I was like, this is it. This is what I collect now. Goodbye taxidermy, hello squeak toys. I thought everything he made, I would think I found the best one. You know, I'd be like, whoa, like this is not an elephant. This guy has a trunk that's 4 inches, but a body that's 10 inches and pig feet and dog ears. Like that is not an elephant, but it works. And I'd be like, this is the best one ever made. Like I found the best one. And then, you know, going through the like collector's obsession, I'd find a better one and be like, look at this lamb. She has a head the size of a hippopotamus and tiny little feet. Her ears are angry. Like, what? Like, this is not a lamb, but it is. So the way I describe them, which might not be right, it looks like someone who was visually impaired touched an animal and then described that animal to someone who had never seen it, and that person made a sculpt of what they described. It's the proportions. Like, you can have a realistic lamb and it's cute, but you make the eyes a little bit bigger, the eyes a little farther apart, the mouth a little higher, and suddenly it's the cutest lamb you've ever seen in your life. And I guess I like just like the little differences that make them so wrong that they're right. I've read a little bit about it mimics a baby face, and our brains are wired to think babies are cute because they have big eyes and like their proportions aren't that of an adult. So these have the same appeal in our brains. Like you see them and you're like, cute. These cats up here on the 3rd shelf, her name is Mittens. This bunny's name is Pinky or Bobo, depending on what country it's from. This poodle behind me is Bonbon. The one below it, this is Raja, the elephant elegant, which always kind of trips me up because you want to say elegant elephant, and it's elephant elegant, whatever. And then we have Jolly Jumbo. This is the first one that I ever got for $1. And then the bottom one is Taco the Burro and Buddy Burro, and they're 2 different donkeys. So what I do is I'll take Edward Mobley toys, originals, and reproduce them out of resin and then paint them. Or I'll take my own sculptures that I feel are cohesive with his work and have those cast out of resin and then paint them and sell them online or at Designer Con. My ultimate goal would be to create more characters for the line. I like to make work that I think he would be proud of. I made this cat head behind me, this little pink lady. I use a 2-part epoxy. I'm not gonna drop the name because they don't pay me to do that. But yeah, it's just a 2-part epoxy air dry clay. It takes me forever to sculpt anything. I'm very slow. I am not a get it done kind of lady. I liked clay as long as I can remember. So my dad is an artist, and when I was little, we would buy Fimo. So I would just sit there and make like mermaids and dragons and unicorns, a lot of fantasy stuff. I was always into like fairy tales, so I would make miniatures. Everything I do is to make my favorite artist, Edward Mobley, more relevant today and to bring awareness of his work while still creating myself, because I don't know what would happen if I didn't. Maybe, I don't know, die. I guess that's the only, if I didn't create, I don't know what I would do with myself. It's really unfortunate that we never got the opportunity to hang out, because I would have loved to like talk about his process and like where he gets these ideas from and where I get ideas from and like see where the two merge, but that's impossible. So now I just go off like an instinct, like would he like this? Would I have been able to work for this man, basically? Like, my dream would be to work for him, but that's impossible, so. So Edward Mobley got his start in Ohio. He got a scholarship to the Ohio Institute of Art. After he graduated, he got a job for a company called Sun Rubber, who at the time was making gas masks for World War II, shaped like Mickey Mouse. Like, you want oddities, that is it. They're beautiful, but they are really bizarre. And when children saw them, they absolutely hated them, like they were terrified. He moved on to working in like development. He was like their go-to for taking two-dimensional sketches and turning them into the toys. He did all the design for them. He did all the sculpting and all of the like paint on the prototypes. The toy world back then was pretty brutal. I think it still is. I'm such like a new little baby to this whole business side of it. He was a freelance designer, so he was working for multiple companies. He had a company in Brazil that he worked with, Australia, Canada, England, France. Like, so basically anywhere that was producing squeak toys, he had his hands in that somehow. And there was a specific company that said, you work with us exclusively, or you don't work for us at all. And so he went down to the factory, which like happened to be relatively close to his home, and he pulled everything that had his name on it. So all the molds, prototypes, wax molds, original wax castings from the molds, boxes of toys still in their boxes. If it had his name on it, he pulled it from the factory. He boxed it up, put it in his studio, and it stayed there until he died. And then his children took everything from the studio and put it in a barn, like a well-kept barn. It wasn't like shoved in the back with like bales of hay. It was really, really nice. And then it stayed there for 20-something years until I showed up. So he never wanted them to be called squeak toys. They're soft, vinyl, safe and sanitary toys for toddlers. His goal was to make something similar to a stuffed animal that moms were able to sanitize. It was just really inventive for the time. They were made out of a natural vinyl. They were painted with food grade paint. Things that in the 60s weren't considered important. I mean, they were still painting toys with lead paint back then and being like, here baby, chew on this. Like, ugh. Like, no, don't let your baby lick lead paint. Their original idea was to have these like beautiful soft ears, and when you touch them, they're like minky on one side and satin on the other, so they have that like, I think we all have that like whoopee, like your baby blanket that you like nubbed to death on the corner or whatever, and maybe you only have like a little square of it left. So for babies, it was a really good tactile experience. Like, they were based on everything. So like, they're soft when you squish them, and they squeak, and they have soft ears that you can nubby to death, and they have blinky eyes so that toddlers could connect with them. They really are a pretty amazing toy for the time, just in the sense of like, they touch all the learning basics. So like kinetic learners, visual learners, auditory learners, like they touch every big milestone when it comes to early childhood development. And I think that's so special about them. His concept was like, they don't hold bugs, they don't hold scents. They're a more sanitary version of a stuffy. I am a completist through and through, which is why I can only collect one thing. If I collected more than just squeaks, and his squeaks in particular, I don't think anyone in my family would be happy about it, because I need every color variant, I need every style. I just like a complete collection. And so when I've met other collectors that are also completists, like, it's something we bond over, is the need to have like a beautiful, pristine, complete collection so that you never have to go on eBay again. I had open heart surgery in 2011 while I was in the hospital and while I was resting at home. I also had a newborn at the time, and there was a lot of sitting and being gentle with my body, but I am not a good sitter. I like to be busy. So I said to my child's dad that I was going to find Edward Mobley, as any normal, rational person does. So I got out my laptop and I just started Googling. And when I say Googling, I will go to the end of Google. I've gone embarrassingly far into Google, like page 206. I'm right there, that's me. Page 2, Shmoo. Like I go deep. And so I found an address and a phone number that I thought, this was just a suspicion, might be related to Edward Mobley, like any rational person does. I called the phone number, because that's not weird. Like, you're just living your life, and all of a sudden this woman calls you and says, "Hi, I like squeak toys. Do you know what I'm talking about?" Like, what if it was the wrong number? I don't know what I was thinking. And so I called the phone number, nothing. So I called again like a month later and left another message, as you do. When someone ignores your first phone call, you just call again. And so I did that for about 8 months, and they still didn't answer. So again, as any rational person does, I took a photo of my collection, hand wrote a letter about how much I loved Edward Mobley's work, and I put it in an envelope, and I sent it registered mail, so they had to sign for it. So I knew they got it. At the time, I didn't know that this address had any link to him. I just had a suspicion. Surprisingly, they did not write me back, because again, that seems insane. And if someone did that to me, I think I would also be a little put off. So they didn't write me back, and I was, oh, so sad. So then I was on the phone with my girlfriend. Her name's Ashley. It's Ash Automaton on Instagram, and we've been friends since my daughter was born. And she also is a big collector, and we went through this whole experience together. And so I called her and I said, I give up. I'm done. It had been like 2 years at this point of me harassing this family. Do not do this. If you like something, I don't recommend this is the way to go, because it could have ended so differently. So I called Ashley and I said, I'm done. I'm done harassing this family. Like, they clearly don't want to talk to me. After 2 years, I've taken the hint. And she said, no, hang up with me and just call one more time. So I call and I hear, hello? And I'm like, I've got you, you're mine. Like, yes, he's mine. I asked for Edward Mobley, and he wasn't there, but his family was. And so we just talked about him for 3 hours. And, you know, I mentioned that I wanted to make a book about him and how important I thought he was and how talented. I'm his #1 fan. There might not be a lot of us, but I am #1 out of the 12 people that collected his work then. So we have this long conversation. I take a million notes, because I'm big on like note taking and keeping everything organized. Like, it's something that's really important to me. And at the very tail end of our conversation, like, I don't even know what compelled me to do this, but at the tail end, I just said, hey, by any chance, do you have any of your dad's work left over? In my head, I imagined maybe catalog saved, maybe original sketches. I did not expect the response I got, which was, we have an entire warehouse full. And so I said, oh, that's amazing, and I would love to buy it if it's for sale. He said, why don't you fly out to look at it? So during this first phone call with this man, it ended with me booking a flight to Ohio while we were on the phone together. I was like, deal, where and when, I'm there, boop, I'm coming. So I flew out in August, and before I flew out there, he would not send me any pictures of what he had. when I would ask how much stuff there is, they would just say a lot. A lot can mean many things. I think it means something different to every person. You can say that this is a lot, but I know numbers-wise, it's not as many as, say, a completist of Star Wars. Like that, to me, that would be a lot. Mine is also a lot, but someone might have 7 and say they have a lot. So we get out there, we get to the house, and he had taken a few things and brought them to the house. So when I got there, I was like, wow, this is amazing. It was very hard not to have sticky fingers and be like, mine, 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 mine. But they didn't belong to me at the time, so I was trying really hard to respect that, and it was awful. Like, I wanted to just grab every single one and shove them in my purse and run back to California as fast as I could. So the next day, we went to where they were stored. They opened the doors, and it was a lot. Boxes upon boxes stacked in this barn, and then all the copper molds. And I was just in heaven. You know, imagine collecting something and finding out it's great, and then going somewhere and it's all there, every single thing, and they're all still in their boxes. We pull everything out of the barn, and again, I'm like, you can't buy this right now. You need to control yourself. So I mentioned wanting to purchase everything, like all at once, and he said, you can purchase them on your next trip out here. And I was, next trip? Oh, okay. The first trip I did take a few things that I was like, I'll die if this doesn't come home with me. So I went home with 4 boxes originally, and I was like, got home and ripped them out. Oh, so beautiful. And then on my next trip back was when we took everything from the barn, everything. So copper molds, boxes upon boxes of original sculptures, color variants, boxes from the factory with toys still in their boxes, and shipped it all back to California. At the very end of our day when I bought everything, like we're signing contracts and we're, okay, it's yours now. I had him add a caveat that said, and the rights, and that was it. And it was like, that one little incident made it possible for me to own a company. It probably took like 6 hours to load the pod with help from my girlfriend, Holly, and her husband, Rick. Rick did all the work, and Holly and I just sat there and like oohed and awed over cute squeaks. The pod got to my house, and it was really overwhelming, but like Christmas Day overwhelming, where you're like, everything is amazing, and this is so great. And everything that I pulled out, I felt like, oh my God, I've never seen this thing before. And put it over here. Oh, I've never seen this thing before, and put it over there. From the condensed boxes that we made, there were 273 boxes and all the molds. I couldn't keep everything, so my whole goal was to separate what I was keeping and separate what I was gonna sell, because I wanted to create a community for Edward Mobley. I wanted more people to care about his work, and the only way to do that is by sharing it. If I would have kept all of it, it would have remained me and 12 other people that collected Edward Mobley's work. So after I separated everything, I had my friend's little sister come and be my first assistant ever, who I'm still obsessed with, and I love her so much. And I mean days of going through boxes. The wax molds that he created were wrapped in tissue from the 60s. But if you've ever had a tissue explode, that was all over my house. It was a big mess. You don't want to be in this. I have a pretty big living room. Spread it all out in the living room and just like bask in the glory of all this hard work. What I bought it for was my life savings. And I have a family. It was not a financially responsible decision to make, but I made it. So I need to make this money back to support me, my daughter, and all of our living expenses. So we just started making Etsy listings. And I would say in the first 6 months, I already found that people were connecting with them and really cared about them, and were really invested in this like banana story about this weird woman who found the creator of her favorite toys and like lived out every collector's dream. Like, I'm so proud of myself. I don't care how that sounds. It was a lot of work. I deserve credit for it, but also so lucky that those things did stay so safe and that his family kept his work so safe for so many years until I came and found them. Like, they were waiting for me, but I had no idea what I was doing. To be young and stupid, because there wasn't a community yet that was big enough to sustain what I had bought. Like, there weren't enough people to buy everything I had bought that I knew. But now I know that there were pockets here and there, and that it was just about finding them. What I'm trying to do is like put us all together in this like weird, kitschy world. Like, we're all gonna be nice to each other, we're all gonna be gentle, we're not going to be mean collectors. That's sort of working out, but it takes a lot of work to make sure that people are kind to each other while still falling in love with his work. Because as collectors, we want everything, and there's a lot of competition there. And so my goal is to like curb that for people and tell them there will be another one, I promise you. No company in the history of anything has been like, well, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars developing this product and we'll make one. That is not how it works. So when it comes to Grails, like, I guess the company is my Grail. But so many of them are precious to me because I have a lot that he hand painted himself. There's a few up here that he was working out ideas with. So like, I have a few prototypes that were never created. So like, there is just one. And I would say those are pretty special. In our agreement, I agreed not to use his name on product for family reasons. I'm still really protective over his family. They're very important to me still. Like, I still reach out and make sure that like they're doing well. And I have 4,000 ideas that go through my brain every minute of every day. I'm like, I should do this, I should do this, I should do this, I should do this. So currently, I'm working on a book. I'm working on resin reproductions. I'm working on a top secret thing that like, with an NDA. I'm working on miniatures of his work. Oh, I have so many things that the future is, there's a lot. But I'm just trying to do what feels right by him. Really what I'm focused on currently is like working on a book about all of his work, like what he brought to the toy community, how truly special Edward Mobley's work is still. You know, even though he's passed away, in my opinion, he was one of the most talented artists. I don't want him to be forgotten. You know, I don't want him to just be some, oh, I kind of remember those toys and like whatever. Like, I truly can't let that happen. It would break my heart. Okay, we are inside my museum slash very small retail slash Etsy store. So I've put all of his work behind me, and then on the other side is the toys in their packaging. And so you're free to make an appointment on Instagram and come by and check it all out. The reason I got this space was years ago, I had it set up very similar, but it was in my garage. And when you have a partner who likes motorcycles and cars, and the garage needed to become his space. And the way we function as a family is he goes there, I come here when we need like healthy alone time. Everyone who knows me is gonna laugh real hard right now, but if you send me a DM, I will send you my phone number. I'm like not real private, so you can DM me on Instagram at bittersqueaks. You can make an appointment there if you're more comfortable with that, and I will meet you here at Old World in Huntington Beach. Come by with your stuff, and I'm happy to tell you whatever I know about it. Even though I only collect Edward Mobley, I'm pretty well aware of squeaks that weren't designed by him. So like if you want to bring your stuff by and say like, what is this? How do I find more of this thing? Like, I'm happy to help you. And like, guide you in your collecting. I'm a firm believer in there is enough crap for all of us. Like, there is enough stuff out there for everyone to be happy.
Hi, my name is Dov Kellemer from DKE Toys. I run this business here that sells all sorts of toys, but right now we focus on resin action figures made by artists. I've been a toy collector since I was about 18. I think that's when I started buying back the Star Wars Kenner figures from my childhood, and that's when it sort of evolved into a business. I would buy a collection from somebody, keep the pieces I need, and I try to off the stuff I didn't want. Eventually, those pieces that I was selling started to pay for the stuff that I was keeping, and then it started to pay a little bit more, and then it started to pay the bills, and then before you know it, I was a toy dealer. DKE Toys just stands for Dov Kellemer Enterprises. It was started as a business, like an umbrella, to do whatever I was doing and whatever I was interested in. It's evolved through the years. It started out doing vintage toys. It got into doing wholesale and closeouts at some point, and then that sort of morphed into designer toy distribution. In about 2016, I sold the designer toy distribution company to Dispersed, and then I sort of went on the convention circuit, which I was already doing for designer toy distribution, but instead focused on resin action figures, made by artists. In about 2004, 2005, I stumbled across an artist named the Sucklord, and he created this figure here called the Gay Empire. And I was heavily involved in designer toys, which designer toy market was mainly focused on vinyl and not resin. And resin was sort of like not that cool. But this guy out of New York City in Chinatown was making his own action figures, and it really spoke to me because the way I evolved into designer toys from traditional toys was the concept of a creator, and that there was an artist personality who was like imbued in this piece of art, and it wasn't about the property. You weren't buying it because it was Star Wars. You weren't buying it because it was Marvel. You were buying it because you liked the artist's work and you appreciated the aesthetics. And so this Gay Empire action figure sort of borrowed from pop culture. He had his own stamp, so it was an art toy, but it also made a political statement. It had sort of that wacky package product parody kind of feel to it. It had this sort of like Adbusters nature to it. It was sort of like firing on all cylinders. So it really spoke to me that this was a valid medium for artists to be expressing themselves in. So around 2010, a couple artists, Killer Bootlegs and Healy Made, started releasing their own stuff, and they were involved in making toys before, but I think 2010 was when they started putting their own stuff out for sale, and there was a little bit of a backlash. People thought, oh, these guys are Sucklord ripoffs, but they really weren't. They had their own style, and this art form and this genre has sort of evolved to where, I think in my database, I think I have over 300 artists that we've worked with, and there's got to be more. So I would say there's probably maybe 400 or 500 artists in the scene who have chosen action figure as their medium, and that's the way that they express themselves. Like, some people paint and some people write music, some people make films. These guys and gals make action figures. In any given convention that we do, and we do 3 a year, we do our own virtual show called DKECon right here in this booth on Zoom. We do San Diego Comic-Con and DesignerCon in Anaheim. And for each show, we have about 40 artists who make finished product and send us, action figures for us to sell. And then We also help other artists, let's say like Ron English, who is, a fine artist and sells in galleries and makes his own toys, but we also help artists who would not normally make action figures in this scale be able to participate in this medium. In any given show, I would say we have creators from 8 to 10 different countries. I think overall there are artists, I would say, in at least 20 countries so far. I would have to sit down and try and pinpoint that on a map, but it's growing all the time. There are hot spots right now in Argentina. There was a big surge in Thailand. Now I know creators in Germany, Poland. This bug is sort of like hitting with different artists around the world, and it's just people start getting into it and then their friends get into it, and it's sort of becoming a scene. DK Toys is just the company I created to be able to do all of this business. I think the inspiration is obvious. It comes from my love of toys, especially action figures. And I think there's a large part of this that has to do with nostalgia. It has to do with the things that we loved as children. And when an artist today takes that same format and those same characters and turns it on its side, that's what's really interesting to me. I think the mainstream toys that are released all the time and will continue to come out forever have sort of lost their sheen, I guess. After so many years, you just see companies putting out the same things over and over again and then reinventing it in order to put out more stuff for the next generation, because they need to make money and they need to keep putting stuff out. It's missing something for me, and that's basically how I got into this. This had that thing that I was looking for. Star Wars is certainly a huge influence. It's a huge influence on this scene, and most artists in the scene have at least made something Star Wars, although there are people who, in particular, who try to avoid it because everyone else does it. It's the simplest thing. It is the most universal concept to riff on, and I believe it started because when Kenner was making action figures, that line lasted so long in terms of the life of most toy lines. There were characters that they made that only had 4 or 5 seconds of screen time, and as kids there was no backstory, there was no expanded universe, there was no role-playing game. There were some comics and a few books, but you really had to make up and use your imagination to figure out who these characters were. And so it sort of set a precedent of using your imagination to, run wild. And so I think, in addition to the cultural impact of the movies, the toys also had some sort of revolutionary aspect to them. And so I think they have a lot of staying power. I am sometimes tired of the Star Wars references. You see a lot of Boba Fett figures. It's sort of a running joke. Every show there's some other Boba Fett inspired. You can see one right here by an artist in Thailand. It's called Puffy Fett in this jacket, and Boba Fett sells. And so people keep buying it. It's not necessarily a requirement here. I think I am most excited when artists do work outside of Star Wars. Well, I mean, this Luke Chu figure, there's 100 of them in the world. Now, Luke Chu sells paintings for thousands of dollars, but he hand-painted this figure. And unless we had approached him, he probably would not have ever made a 3 3/4 inch action figure that you could put on your shelf next to Darth Vader. But I'm happy that he did. It was a series of 3 here that you can see. This was the 3rd one. And he has his fans, but I hope that we're also getting a little bleed over from people who are into Star Wars and stuff like that, who see his work and say, oh, this is cool. I want to buy that because I like this guy's art, and not necessarily because it has a Star Wars reference, which it does not. DKE customers come from all walks of life. There's a lot of collectors who've been collecting vintage figures for I don't know how many years, over 40 years now, and they've sort of run out of things to collect. So when you present them with something that looks like a vintage figure but has an interesting artist take on it, and it's a limited edition and it's hand painted and there's only 20 of them in the world, that seems to pull on those same nostalgia strings. There are other people who are just into the designer toy aspect who just like the artist because they like the artist's work. Sometimes the figures are just a gag. Sometimes it just makes them laugh. Sometimes they buy a figure or buy a figure as a gift for someone else because they think it's funny, and they might not have a collection of 1,000 figures. They might just have one on their shelf. If they're gonna have something on their shelf, I'd rather have them buy a handmade piece of art because I think that that's more interesting than just the plastic toy off the shelf. I enjoy what I do. I get to work with a lot of creative people. At the end of the day, though, it's still a business. I have work to do and bills to pay. I sold my distribution company in 2016 because I didn't want to maintain the warehouse and the half a dozen employees and the insurance and all of that kind of stuff. And we were distributing for 500 companies to, 2,000 customers in over 40 countries, and that got to be too much. And so I decided to sell that and focus on my family. And I was supposed to be like semi-retired, but now it seems like I'm working full-time again, doing these 3 shows a year. So it's a job, it's pretty cool. But, sometimes like the toilet stops up and I have to fix it. So yeah, I'm the CEO of my own company, but sometimes I'm the janitor too. So. The joke around here is that collecting is a disease. And I think I have the disease, and I'm also a, facilitator and promoter to other diseased people. There's a lot of reasons that people collect. Humans at their core are resource gatherers, and it is possible that some of us get confused and think that these are resources to be gathered. And it's true. I mean, I'm a bad example because I've actually made money and supported myself collecting. Most people buying stuff are not afforded that opportunity. And a lot of people buy things, especially mainstream toys, often thinking that they're going to, retire on their, by selling their toy collection. And by the time someone thinks that something is collectible, it's usually not. You have to get into the game when it's not really a big deal. If you were collecting comics in the 80s, 70s, the 60s, and then today, you might have $1 million books. But if you're buying comics today with a hope to retire, that's rough. I mean, obviously there's gonna be, if you're smart and prudent and make good decisions, there's gonna be some good pieces out there that are gonna appreciate and value, but the majority of the stuff doesn't. When it comes to the stuff we sell currently, I view all of this as art. And so when there's an edition of 20 of something, and after it sells out, it's very hard for it not to hold its value. Almost everything on the aftermarket is selling for more money. And the only reason it wouldn't is if someone just prices it low because they want to get rid of it. But people who wait can normally get their money out of it. But there's a lot of theories about collecting. Humans always want to identify themselves with something. They want to belong. I think, especially when you're growing up, whatever you're into, let's say you're not an athlete, right? But everyone else is in a little clique and they're athletes, but you're into comic books. And you have something that you can identify with your friends and talk about comic books or whatever it is. All the things that were considered nerdy back then are the coolest things to do now. So video games, cartoons, action figures, comic books, all of these things that you were considered like the 40-year-old virgin if you did these things when you were an adult, now kids are doing with their parents. The pop culture divide has really sort of, no one's accusing this of being like the devil's music. I mainly consider myself a Star Wars art collector. Most of what I collect sort of falls under and into that category. Much of it's like art that's on the wall. Sometimes an artist uses a Star Wars theme in their work. Sometimes it's a piece of work of something that's been published, a magazine cover, trading card, or a comic book. I consider these action figures art also.
that sort of falls into Star Wars art. I have another sub-collection of political art with Star Wars references, and those are pieces where artists use a Star Wars theme to communicate a political idea. But everything generally comes back to art, and I've sort of veered away from things that are made by companies, by committee. I think as I'm getting older and I have kids, I'm doing a better job of keeping things that have meaning for what I have been doing and sort of creating these little time capsules. I mean, yeah, of course there's paintings I have on the wall that are very meaningful, that I look at every day. I don't think there's any one piece. I think it's really about the collection and how the pieces complement each other. There were phases that I went through earlier in life that, you know, I just sold everything. And now that I have my kids, I don't have anything to show them from like what I did. It's like, you know, I bought a house selling these toys and I don't have those toys to show them anymore. So I'm sort of going back and buying one or two of that or three or four of these, and just to create sort of like a history. Whether they care or not, I don't know. Over a dozen years in the distribution business, I've put aside, you know, 2 samples of everything that we ever carried. And I went through and I picked out the stuff that was meaningful, that, you know, was sort of like a landmark for us. And everything else was just in the process of finding new homes for. I mean, like any collector, I have a list of things that I'm after. There are pieces of art that other collectors have that they're not willing to part with. And if there's another collector who has something you want, especially if they are wealthy, I mean, and have sort of like fuck you money, like you can't offer them enough money to get them to part with that piece. You have to find them something that they want even more. And I've been lucky enough, you know, from time to time, like, you know, I know what a couple of these guys want, and I have a list of the things that I want, and then something shows up at my door, I can say, hey, I have this thing, and you can sort of tell when they sort of lose their mind, and it's like, it's gonna cost you. I need that. So it's happened. You know, I have a file of pieces that are either lost to the world or people won't sell me, and you know, I seek them out every once in a while. I once hired a private investigator in Russia to track down a movie poster artist. Didn't work out. Spent $200 for nothing. You can follow us at DKE Toys on most social media. Instagram is really the place currently as of 2022 where everything is posted. DKetoys.com has links to our store, my contact information, and a whole lot of other information and history about the stuff that we've done, so check it out. It's hard to predict the future. I've sort of reinvented what I've done, you know, every 7 to 10 years. My wife can tell, you know, she says you're sort of having that itchy feeling again, like you want to start making moves. The business has evolved. I haven't gotten rid of everything else from the past. I still dabble in other things that, you know, I can sort of like pull the best from what I like and get rid of what I don't like. I think this medium of artist handmade action figures is here to stay and will last forever, and I think it will grow. What DKE is part of it, you know, I think we'll continue to do the conventions 3 times a year. It's fun and engaging. We are working on a book right now, which I hope in the next couple years will be out, that will have examples of all of this kind of work for the world to see. But what the future actually holds, I don't know. New things happen all the time, and we just have to wait and see.
I create art to try to escape, I guess, daily, routines of life that kind of put a lot of stress on you. I just try to come home. I try to make some art, and the art kind of like takes me to a different place. When I was younger, I was exposed to a lot of domestic violence. So artwork would take me to just a different place. I'm at a peaceful place when I make artwork. All right, my name is Jaime Valderrama. I am an illustrator, toy maker, toy designer, printmaker, and grave robber on the weekends. No, my occupation, I'm actually a UPS driver. I drive the big semi-trucks for a living. It has nothing to do with artwork, but that's my bread and butter. I've been an artist my entire life, actually. All the way back from like elementary, I was always that kid in class that, did all the drawings, the comic book art. But like on a professional level, I've been doing it since 2009. Yeah, I've been doing things for magazines, castings, screen prints, stuff that I love. Primarily, I do a lot of black and white illustrations. Then I go over them with like watercolors, Prismacolors, gouache. And then aside from that, I do a lot of resin castings. I sort of do a lot of toys. I do a lot of sculpting. I also do a lot of comic book art. I do my own zines. I print my own stuff. I do my own covers. Believe it or not, a lot of the stuff that I've picked up has been through a lot of trial and error. I've never really taken any art classes, like in college or anything like that. So, I look at a lot of videos, and then I do a lot of research, and then I try to use those tools to execute the ideas or the projects that I want to create. So it all started with stuff that I would see on TV, actually. I would watch cartoons, Ninja Turtles, I would watch like Thundercats, Transformers, and I just kind of like try to copy that and try to like, draw it and the way I saw it in the books too. And then I started, getting into comic books, all the stuff that Jim Lee was doing in the 90s for Marvel. I would try to copy that stuff, just try to mimic what I would see in the comics. What inspires me, it's a culmination of things. I mean, life experiences, music, artwork, toys, a lot of vintage science fiction. I grew up watching a lot of Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, and I get all that stuff, I put it in a blender, I drink it, I create some type of idea in my head, and it just comes out through my hands. That's the best way I could describe it. As far as like drawings and stuff like that, I've been inspired by a lot of that stuff that was going on in the late 70s in Europe, like Mobius, Philippe Drillette, Inky Bilal. All those artists are just like, I hold in high regard, and they really inspired me to push that boundary, to push the limits of my drawing capabilities. As far as toy making, it all started with like just a dream of trying to make my own toy line. And then eventually I came across people like Dove, Barbarian Rage, Retro Brand. Those guys create incredible things. And it just propels me to like try to create things and push my skills to its limits. The stuff I create, it's a combination of like science fiction and horror, because I love those two genres. I try to create things that are based on some of my short illustrated stories. I try to create things that are unique, that bring something new to the table. I've been doing the 3.75-inch figures, and I've also been doing the 6-inch figures. I've been collecting Sufubi lately, so I've kind of been inspired to make Sufubi-styled figures. So I've been doing like these roto castings, and those figures measure about, I think, 7 inches tall, about like 4 inches. And I've been doing these like smaller ones where it's like 3 inches. And these have all been inspired by stuff that I've seen happen in Japan. For the 3.75-inch figures, I would get like a very plain figure, and I'll strip it down, and then I would make it my own, like I would sculpt on top of that. But the new figures that I've been working on, like the rotocast figures, the way I make those is that I do original sculpt out of monster clay, and then I make copies of it. As far as like the materials that I use, I try to use the 327 resin casting resin. where I use a 326. I use a 326 for rotocasting because it solidifies faster. I do the Mold Max 30 for the silicone molds. As far as like the stuff that I incorporate into the figures after they're finished and ready to go, I try to incorporate like glitters, holographic vinyls, materials. My dad did upholstery for a living for so many years. He's retired now, but he would come home with all these different materials that he would use for his work. And I would always be fascinated by all that stuff, like the shiny, the very vibrant materials. So try to use some of, I'm inspired by that stuff, and I try to use some of that stuff incorporate some of that stuff into my figures. A lot of stuff that I do is very intricate and very time consuming, but I see it as like, you know, the detail for me is everything. Like I said, you know, I try to use very unique materials because, you know, that idea that I have in my head, I'm trying to materialize it, and it has to look just the right way that I envision it. So based on the measurements of the figure that I'm making, I incorporate that all into the dimensions of the packaging, and then I go online and try to find the materials that I need. The process sometimes takes a couple months, depending on the type of project and how big it is. But every project takes a different amount of time to create, from when it's conceived as an idea to when it becomes into like a physical form. Total figures that I've made, I think I'm on my 7th figure. I have so many ideas, but I just wish I had more time. You know, I just don't have the time. I got work to do. I got family to raise. So it's just, you know, it's hard, but you know, on my free time, I try to make things happen, definitely. I'm proud of all of them, but the Interdimensional Guardian, yeah, 3.75 inch Interdimensional Guardian is actually up in that case. I have the prototype in there. That figure is just what made everything possible for me. That's the one that kind of propelled me to try to make my own figures. Most of my figures, I try to make biographies, little shorts, like little biographies on each figure. But a lot of the stuff is taken from my short illustrated stories that I've done in my zines. So I try to get some of those characters and make them into actual like resin casted figures. Each figure is about like something strange happening in the universe, or some type of dying race, or some type of alien that exists inside of some type of gallery that houses like all these artifacts from around the universe. That's actually the tour guide. That's his backstory. I'm very passionate about the stuff that I make. You know, everything, like I said, I'm very tedious, and when it comes to making my stuff, I put a lot of detail into it, and I try to be unique about the stuff that I make. I try to bring something new to the table. If I could share some of that stuff with people that share my passion, then it's all worth it, you know. It's a labor of love for me, pretty much. Toys, I've been collecting toys for quite some time now. I think since 99, I think, or 2000. It all started off with the Spawn toys. I started collecting the Spawn toys first, and then from there I started collecting the Beast Wars and so on until I've acquired this big collection you see behind me. McFarlane, I hold him in high regard because he's the one that kind of like transformed the whole industry to how it looks now. He was pushing the boundaries in the way he was making the toys. I collect vinyl, I collect toys, comics, graphic novels, just pretty much like things that are kind of odd too. I like to surround myself with things that inspire me, pretty much. I come in here and I look at all these toys and I just get that feeling of inspiration. I like to have that feeling, you know, when I had as a kid, walking into that comic shop, seeing all those comic books, all those toys, and just leaving there inspired. So I think that's why I've acquired this entire collection here. It's just to feel inspired, push myself to create something, you know, unique and better. I mostly collect retro stuff and just pretty much anything that catches my eye. I collect a lot of horror toys, science fiction toys. The toys that I collect, you know, I just don't see a toy. I see like the artist behind the artwork for the package, that person that worked on the design of the toy. Like for me, those are the things that inspire me, that I connect with. When I come across something I see, I can't resist and I just have to buy it. And yeah, I'm into like the animatronics. I'm into stuff that's all 3D, like this thing here. I'm into masks. I buy a lot of unique prints too. So it's just these artists that I've kind of been following for a little bit, and then when something was up on their website, I just try to pick it up. But yeah, man, I'm just a big fan of things they're unique, kind of odd, eerie sometimes. As a kid, well, my parents never really We were kind of poor a little bit, so my parents never really bought me like brand new toys. We would always get some at the thrift store. So for me, toys, like I said, they're always and still are like an escape for me. You know, I go into a different world when I surround myself with these things. Just a source of inspiration and nostalgia for me to take me back to more simpler times. It's an amazing thing. I say the pieces that I hold like in very high regard are the pieces that I played with as a kid. The Supernaturals back here, or like the Visionaries, those were all toys that I was very attracted to when I was a kid. And obviously, you know, got the Ninja Turtles. Yeah, those are all figures that I had as a kid, and you know, now that I'm a grown-up, I have them in like minty condition back there. Captain Power was way ahead of its time. Captain Power was a toy that incorporated out of the chrome finish, and those toys were just way ahead of their time. They were interactive with the TV. It didn't work too well, but the idea of trying to make that possible was just it was innovative, and it was just something that nobody had been doing. I do sell my work. I would do a lot of shows. I would do a lot of zine fest, and that's where I would primarily sell my works, or like conventions and stuff. But when the COVID hit, I was kind of forced to sell my stuff online. I still sell my stuff online because, you know, we're slowly trying to get back into doing the conventions. But yeah, if you want to look up some of my stuff, you could find me on Instagram under Epoch Art, and then from there's a link to my website, my Etsy, and that's where I sell all my work. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm always posting up flyers or just events that I'm going to be at. Like for example, last year during November, I was at DesignerCon. So, you know, just be on the lookout for that. And I think I might have the LA Zine Fest coming up later this year, and I'm also going to be in DesignerCon later this year. I've been doing art for quite some time now. Everything that I've gotten into somehow is associated with artwork. So, you know, before I was doing street art, before that I was doing like graffiti art. And, you know, I started doing zines, and now I'm doing toys. So I think 10, 15 years, 20 years from now, I'm not sure where I'm going to be at. You know, I got attracted into making toys a couple years back, and that's what I've been doing since. But later on, something comes up. I'm sure it's going to be whatever it is. I'm sure it's going to be associated with artwork. So if it's welding, if it's, you know, paper mache, whatever it is, it's always going to be related to art and associated with art. So whatever it is, I'm going to push the boundary and bring the best to the table.
My artwork is really influenced by what I collect, and because both, I guess, are influenced by what I love. So I really like vintage and antique things. I particularly love Kewpie dolls. My first Kewpie related item actually is something I've had since I was a baby. I have a china plate that my grandmother gave me when I was born, I think, that I just grew up with. It's a Kewpie sleeping in a poppy, and in tattooing it became a Kewpie sleeping in a red rose. A very classic image that you may have seen before. That is also a really famous tattoo image because sailor tattoos, that era of, it's called American traditional tattoos, a lot of what the images were based on was pop culture. Kewpie dolls, for those who don't know, was like as big as Mickey Mouse back then. I mean, they're huge. It's a design that started as a comic book illustration by an artist, Rose O'Neill, and eventually became dolls. Started as a bisque porcelain doll, then became a composition doll, rubber, vinyl. Like Kewpie dolls found their way into Tattoo Flash. Hi, I'm Show Pigeon. You can call me Evie. I'm an artist and business owner. I'm primarily a tattooer. I also paint, and I do a lot of artist collaborations that let me delve into other things like toy making, apparel, other merch and products. I'm a toy collector, absolutely. I used to be shyer about it, and then in the last several years I've learned to not care and let my freak flag fly. I have toys all over my studio and my home, and sometimes I joke that having a studio is really just an excuse to have a place for my collection. So I've been a tattooer for 12 years. I've been an artist in general for a longer time, but a professional artist for 12 years. Tattooing was my first professional art, and then my painting technique grew out of that. My painting technique is based in traditional tattoo flash, which, if you don't know that term, it's like if you think of a sailor going into a shop and picking out an eagle or a heart off the wall, that's flash is what that's called. So the way the old-timey tattooers used to paint that is with India ink and watercolor, and they would use their spit on the brush to draw the gradients out. And so my mentor, who taught me tattooing, taught me that technique as well, and then I started using it in paintings. First painting flash, but then eventually painting just whatever watercolors with that. So 12 years of tattooing, the painting grew out of that, and then I started doing artist collaborations maybe, I guess it was around the time that I started to branch out and have my own studio, because it gave me the freedom to work more on my own instead of feeling like I was beholden to the owner of the tattoo shop, because I suddenly was the owner of the tattoo shop. So I started working with one friend in particular, Miss Ladybug is her brand, and she would have me design an image and put it on some clothing. Then I met Kate, Bitter Squeaks, and we started a toy collaboration. I had this dream of making my own Cupid doll, basically my own version of a Cupid doll. And she owns the Edward Mobley Toy Estate and had a mold that looked a lot like my sketch, my character design. So we got together and started producing it. That's the biggest artist collaboration I've done to date. And then, you know, I do little projects here and there with other artists. That part of it, the artist collaboration part, has grown more over the last 6 years, I'd say. I always did art in some form or another, and my mom was really encouraging of me dabbling in art. She was really creative. My parents were more academic. My dad is a psychologist, my mom was a teacher. They both have PhDs. But I had extended family that were professional artists. I had a great aunt on my mom's side, her aunt, who was an illustrator, and my dad's sister is a curator and artist herself. And so I had a sense of art as a career, but I also had this feeling of like I was supposed to do the traditional straight-laced thing. So, I mean, ever since I was a kid, I painted and sculpted and took art classes. I thought about going to art school for college, but ultimately I decided that it wasn't practical, which is funny because now, of course, I make my living off of art. But it took me a while to get to that. I went to college and tried to figure out some sort of practical job that I could do that felt a little bit creative. So I explored, maybe I want to do PR and marketing. And then I went the other way and was like, maybe I want to do social work. But ultimately I graduated and didn't know what I wanted to do. So I fell into different odd jobs. So I have a history of mental illness as well. With depression is mainly how it manifests. And I got to the point where I was just overwhelmed, and I was aware of what I thought everyone else wanted for me, but I had no idea what I wanted for myself. And I started making choices little by little to do things that were kind of just because I wanted to do them. And so one of those things was that I got my first tattoo. And then the world didn't end. So I was like, that's interesting. And so I got another one. And then I started just being really interested in tattoos and not thinking about it as a career, like it hadn't occurred to me yet. But I would doodle tattoo ideas. MySpace was the social media of the time. So I was following a lot of tattooers and reading about old school tattoos and sailor tattoos. And eventually I just had this moment where it clicked that that's a job, and it was the only thing that was getting me excited, the only thing I was really interested in. At the time, Miami Ink was the tattoo TV show, and there was an apprentice on that. So that's how I realized, okay, if you want to get into tattooing, you have to get an apprenticeship. So my husband Googled how to get a tattoo apprenticeship, and it suggested putting together a portfolio of my artwork, which was something that hadn't occurred to me. So I thought, oh, okay, perfect. It also gave me the opportunity to stall for a long time because I was really scared. So at the time I was working at a chiropractor's office, like I said, just odd jobs I had fallen into. And I would work during the day, and then I'd go home and I would sit and I would draw. And I put together basically really rudimentary flash designs that when I look back now, like, thank God my mentor saw potential because to me, I'm like, whoa, I need to learn how to draw. Obviously I did, but then I just started contacting people. It's really hard to get an apprenticeship. I got a lot of rejections. And then I found somebody great who was willing to teach me. And I worked under her official apprenticeship for a couple years and then worked alongside her for a couple years. That was back in Chicago where I grew up, and then moved out to California because of my husband's job 10 years ago. Then I worked at shops with other artists and other owners for a while and opened my own studio here 6 years ago. When I got interested in tattooing and became a tattooer, my first love tattoo-wise was these classic sailor tattoos, and so I started doing designs inspired by them. I already knew what Kewpie was. Like I said, I had that plate from my childhood, and I just started doing all these different designs with Kewpies, and it was so fun. Everything I drew just made me smile. And again, with my history of depression, it was fun to just do things for the joy of it. When I was a younger artist, like growing up in my art, I always felt like I defined myself by my depression and like put value in like that I was this deep person who was sad all the time, which is a bummer to feel like I'm basing my value in my mental illness. Obviously, I've worked a lot out of that to get away from that in my healing and my recovery from it. And really celebrating joy is my big thing. And doing artwork that is a celebration of the frivolous things that I love is, I think, a huge part of that. I love doing a tattoo that just makes you smile. I always say, like, what better thing to have on your body than something that you're just gonna look at and smile every day? And that's how I feel about my toy collection too. Because I collect Kewpies so extensively at this point, I try to avoid collecting too much other stuff because it can get out of hand. Kewpies just delight me, and I'm not super well versed in the value of, I have a better idea than your average person who doesn't collect Kewpies. The ones I collect, it's more based on just the ones that I see and my heart jumps. So I have a lot of rubber Kewpies, which are more recent, well, 70s and 80s probably. I like them. The kid in me finds them huggable and it makes me smile. I also have some bisque ones, but I don't have any of like the super original Rose O'Neil Blue Wing bisque ones. I have some of the 20s through 30s era ones where it's like the jointed bisque doll that's standing. I love those. And I've invested in a few of those that I have at my home in a special case. And then my most recent acquisition is this totally creepy composition Kewpie doll. I think it's from like the 30s. And when I say creepy, I mean, it's creepy in a way that I find delightful, which is that it at one time had hair, and it's an old doll that's been well loved, and its hair has been well loved and rubbed off, and so it's got this like wispy, spindly hair. I find it very charming. But others, like I bought it and my husband said, okay, that one's going to your studio. That is not going in the house. I like the older Kewpies that need love, you know? They've been loved and then they've kind of been put aside, and then I uncover it at a flea market and I'm like, oh, you sweet baby, you need a home and you can come live with me and with your Kewpie brethren and you'll have a nice life. How long have I been collecting? Collecting things always. When I was a kid, I had a rock collection, but it wasn't like actual rocks. It was basically gravel. I had a shoebox that I covered with wrapping paper and like made it my little rock collection. I just always collected stuff. And Like, I had Barbie dolls longer than you're like supposed to, and it was a secret that I was embarrassed about, but I would still take them out and play with them when the door was closed. And my parents would like knock on the door and I'd be like, just a second, because I was embarrassed because I was whatever, 12 and still playing with Barbie dolls, which, you know, now I'm like, go for it. Actually, my first Cupid doll was much more recent than you might think. It was within the last 10 years. I had the Cupid plate from when I was a kid, but I never had Cupid dolls. I had already started doing the tattoos of Cupids. And then I was at like a little antique store in Santa Barbara. I was up there for my cousin's wedding, and there was this little rubber Cupid doll. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's the cutest thing. I obviously need a Cupid doll. And then you can't just have one Cupid doll because there's so many different varieties. So I started collecting more and more. And then once people know you like a thing, they start giving them to you. So I would get a lot of gifts of Cupids, which truly never bothered me at all. Like, it wasn't a collection where you're like, oh man, now I'm stuck collecting frogs or whatever. Like, it was legitimately something I was always, and still am always, delighted to get a Cupid. My mother-in-law finds the best Cupids because she's out in central Illinois. And so she'll go to antique stores and things that aren't as picked over as like a place here where somebody like me would go and get Cupids. So she finds these really cool old like chalkware carnival prize Cupids, or little porcelain ones, or sort of these like knockoff Cupids that were unlicensed, but they're old enough now that it's also collectible and also just charming, and so I want to collect it just because I like it. So I have an older brother who's a minimalist. He's all about like trying to live with as little stuff as possible. And that is not me. I love my stuff, I really do. It's shallow and materialistic. I mean, I try to be sustainable in a lot of ways. I mean, I guess the fact that I collect toys is better. I don't know. I don't want to put a moral judgment on any of it. Basically, it brings me joy. It's like an apology to myself as a 12-year-old who I like would shame for playing with my Barbie dolls, you know? Like, why should I be ashamed of that? There's this idea of like certain things at certain ages, and you have to throw away childish things at a certain point, but I don't know, life's a bummer enough. Life is serious enough, and surrounding myself with things that bring me joy is important. I get a lot of my collectibles at flea markets. In Southern California, there are so many great ones. Back in Chicago, my husband and I, we used to go to the Kane County flea market in Kane County by St. Charles, Illinois, and we would find good finds there. And there's places around, but out here, once we moved, I met somebody early on who was like, oh, what do you like to do? You know, suggesting things to me in my new home. And I said, oh, you know, we really like flea markets and antique stores. And he was like, oh, you have to check out the Rose Bowl Flea Market. So that was the first one we went to, which is great. And then we found out about the Long Beach Flea Market. My studio is in Orange, and there's the Orange Circle, which is full of antique shops. So I go there a lot. A lot of times we'll like do a day trip just based on going to an antique store. Like around California, there's so many different towns and areas that you can do a day trip to. So if you go a little farther out, like anywhere just a little less populated, there's going to be better antiquing for sure. So, I mean, I forget where I was, up by Monterey at just whatever antique shop. I saw the most amazing Cupids I'd ever seen. They were out of my budget because they were like the real deal with the original boxes, which is kind of my dream Cupid. One day I'll have one of the bisque ones in the original box with the Rose O'Neal illustrations. The tattoos that I do, that's my primary job and my primary source of income. I also have a rotating line of merch, I guess. I don't have a line of merch that necessarily sticks around forever. It's kind of like I'll do a small run of something. My biggest run of merch that I've done is a character called Pigeon the Cube Doll, which is a collaboration with Bitter Squeaks. And together we worked to develop a toy version of this character I had drawn. We started by making them in resin at about 3 inches. And I did a line of 100 dolls. I hand painted every single one. It was a total labor of love. And those I have all sold. I have a couple that I kept for myself, but otherwise those are not available anymore. Then we made a mini pigeon doll version, which was factory made. I designed the outfits, but then they're made in a factory and painted in a factory. And they're 1.75 inch, I think, little vinyl dolls. And it's basically my version of a Cupid doll. So those I sell at events and through my website. I also sell my paintings through my website, and sometimes I do art shows and events, things like that. Right now I have patches that are based on my artwork. I've also done a lot of enamel pin collaborations with the pin company Yesterdays, and then I've done a few enamel pin runs just on my own. I have bracelets right now that are a collaboration with a local macrame artist, Lilac Crafted, and basically I took a illustration of mine, made it into a charm, and then the bracelets are made with that charm. I even did a collaboration with a local flower designer who does bouquets, and she did floral arrangements using my little Pigeon the Cute doll in the bouquet. That was a really fun one. Basically, I really like to work with other artists who just inspire me, who get me excited. So yeah, so I sell at events, like I a lot of times do designer con or small pop-ups, and then I sell through my website. I have an online store through my website. So to find me online, all you have to do is remember Show Pigeon, because my website is showpigeon.com. My Instagram, my TikTok, my Twitter that I don't use super regularly, it's all Show Pigeon. And then my website has information about how to get tattooed by me. It has a store with all of my products. And I do business and creative consultations as well. So generally for younger artists who are trying to figure out how to grow their career, or if they're maybe interested in opening their own studio, putting on an event. I've curated events before. Pretty much it allows them to pick my brain about anything. There's information about that on my website as well. You can see my tattoo portfolio, my object portfolio of some of the products I've worked on in the past, and read more about me and get in touch. I'm not a super goal-specific person. Like, I don't set a really specific goal, but I set general goals or things to generally work towards. So like when I started to think, oh, one day I'm gonna want my own studio, I didn't have a really specific idea, but I was like, okay, start saving money as much as you possibly can, because it's gonna take money. And and then it kind of developed along the way. So in 10 years, I would really like to do more with consulting and community. By which I mean, I think sometimes about having a larger space. I don't know if I'll change my space or if I'll just expand how I connect with people, but I'd like to do more pro bono stuff where I can do creative consultations for young artists who don't necessarily have the opportunity to pick the brain of someone who's a professional, who's been doing it a longer time than they have. The thought of having a bigger space would be to do things like more fundraisers. I've used this space for fundraisers in the past, and I'd like to again. I haven't yet post-world with COVID, but I'd like to get back into that when it feels a little safer to have an event with a lot of people in a small space. I've been percolating on ways to do that at other spaces that are larger or outdoor spaces. Just ways that I can sort of be community focused. I didn't grow up in Southern California, but it's become my home to the extent that a little less than a year ago, my husband and I actually bought a home here. We love the community in this area. We picked Anaheim specifically to buy our house because I had gotten involved with the Anaheim Halloween parade a few years back and the Fall Festival, and met people through that. And I see this as a lifelong career, the tattooing, and the art, and I want to keep expanding it in ways that serve my artistic desires and also serve the community that's embraced me.
All right, everybody, are we ready to start Summerslime 5? Thanks, everyone, for coming. I know a lot of you came a long way, and thanks for hanging out, waiting. I hope you're enjoying the night and the day. And
Paul Kaiju is a funny man who makes sofubi toys. And he roller skates and makes crazy monsters in his garage.
My name's Paul Copeland. People know me as, and I know myself as Paul Kaiju. I'm a toy maker. I live in San Diego. I lived in Long Beach for many years of my life, and I just hang out and make toys and do summer slimes with my friends.
So Summerslime started as an alternative for Paul Kaiju to not have to be in the San Diego Convention Center while this was, while it was going on, so that anybody could come to this.
San Diego Comic-Con was a really big event. A lot of people I worked with at Comic-Con, it was a table of 10 artists, and finally that ended. The owner of the table decided he wanted us to spread out like daffodil seeds and do other things. And I understood what he was saying. And so we decided that maybe a lot of people don't go to Comic-Con for, it got really commercial. There was a lot of very interesting things that I saw, like upper toy execs coming to visit independent artists. But I really felt like a lot of independent artists were chased out. So we decided to do Summerslime.
So it started out at Five and Dime, I think, which was a little retail store down there. And then he moved it over to Gunzo, did 1 year by himself there. And then I don't know how, but we teamed up together. And then the two of us did it together, just the two of us for a bit. And then we brought on John Rampage. And then it's kind of grown from there. This will be the second year we're doing it in Santa Ana, hosted by Creature Bazaars. They're kind of helping us keep it rolling.
Here it is, the second one we've had here. It's gone great. The power of friendship, it's strictly that. It's just increasing, but it's not, super critical mass. It's just right. It's like a small DIY pop-up, and we work really well together. And that just makes it flow really good.
We got Grizz and Atomica Exotica, who do soft vinyl toys and ceramics. And they came from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then Rampage Toys lives in upstate New York. And I think this might be his 5th year with us, or 4th year with us. And then myself, I make just wackadoodle soft vinyl toys. And then Creature Bazaar, who's hosting the event, they have a bunch of goodies, more soft vinyl action. And then Paul Kaiju, who's kind of like the headliner. Everything and at all the vendors, it's all soft vinyl poured in Japan. Occasionally other places overseas, but mostly like mom and pop shops.
So I'm Mikey Riggs. I'm the owner-operator of Atomica Exotica with my business partner, Grizzly Bisley, Mr. Grizz Business over here. So we're at Summerslime, and this is a Creature Bazaar Paul Kaiju event with Bowana and John, and we've been doing this for about, I think this is our 3rd Summerslime. Second time with the table, we did our first Summerslime by debuting the Scum Doctor figure that we did. Paul's Scummy Joe head on the Witch Doctor body made the Scum Doctor. So we've been doing that for a couple of years now, and it went from being a single figure release to being a booth, and then this is our 2nd year boothing. Grizz originally was based out of New York, and Grizz was working out in New York doing toys in New York, and I was helping him off and on with stuff there, and then I was like, well, let's just pool of world powers, and we'll just you know, let our powers combine, and we'll just Captain Planet this. So we basically were just like, we'll just, you know, team up and just get everything close and hold hands and just make toys and magic together. We've been doing Atomica Exotica for, I want to say, at least 3-4 years. It's based out of, you know, weird nuclear fallout tiki culture, is how we like to look at it. So we do the atomic fallout of tiki, and that's kind of our main focus, is creating new characters in this universe of the Atomica Exotica.
Very shortly, I will be calling the last 3 numbers on your wristband, and I will give you a number which you will form a line in the order of the number I give you. So, and if you want to go again, hold on to that number, because you can loop around and make another purchase if anything's left, or you want to try for it. Is that good, sir?
That's good. What time does it all start, Paul?
What time does it start?
I don't have my phone.
What time we starting? 6:37 inch. 7 inch.
Approximately a 637 inch or so. Yeah.
6:37-ish. I will begin calling numbers to line up to purchase toys from Summerslime 5. Thank you very much.
The sales style evolved from shows I had at galleries where people would literally camp out on the street overnight waiting for a show to open. And I went to one show and I was like, we can't have people sleeping on the street for shows. So we invented this system of raffle tickets and wristbands, and we can give people a number and tell them to come back at a certain time, and they're free to enjoy themselves, like have a taco or have a beer or whatever they want to do, socialize, and then at a certain time, then they can come to life and, you know, listen and hope they hear their number called so they can buy a piece that they want.
So people pay $30 and they get a t-shirt and a sticker pack. But with that, you are invited to the event and have the opportunity to get, you know, PK's toys and all of our other goodies if you want them.
The first number of the night, 434. Number 1. You can just go right on.
Yeah, go ahead. What are you grabbing there?
My name's Micah Wagner. I collect this stuff, it brings me like joy, and it's just something interesting, and I think the subject matter, just people will come to your house and look at your collection like, what the world is it? And to like explain it, and just the lore behind some of it is just awesome. I live in Hanford, California, which is probably about 40 minutes from Fresno, like Visalia area, Central Cal. To come to this is my thing. My boys enjoy it too. I'm starting to get them into it, and this whole vibe and the community in this world is amazing. I have never been number 1. I think last year I got number 11, and this is like my holy grail number. You know, like I got what I wanted, so that was just amazing. I probably spent a little too much than I really needed to, but hey, number 1, you know. I got one of these uncuts, which is kind of dope. Bottom top. Okay, what else? Look at this guy. If you guys don't know who this guy is modeled after, you should get to know him. Huang, awesome piece from Rampage. And then we got from Atomica Exotica, pretty cool. Then from Paul, the reboot. Cool. The holy grail of the show, clear. Look at this. Ooh. Whoa. Look at that. Cool. Awesome. Yeah.
This is John. We're at Summerslime 2022. Yeah. I just picked up a little something small from Paul. It's a Dr. Deadly Finger, glow in the dark. Can't go wrong. Just glow in the dark at night. Last year, I missed out on this like really rad Taxidermy. I guess these came like blank, so they painted all of them like one-ofs, and the pink is just so like funky. Yeah, it's like not the typical like Taxidermy color, so it just looks super funky. And then I got a few of these. I'm just like going with the pink vibe. So these are from Bana. We got the Morel and the Globby. This came out just recently, and super cool. Sculpted. These are all sculpted by Gargamel, so that's super rad. This Hedora Rampage, he one-up painted this, so that's like super rad. It's just like everyone, like Rampage, Bana, like Gargamel. It's just such a great like set and combo. Yeah.
So what did you enjoy the most about Summerslime this year?
The beer was really great, tacos, the people, like seeing everything in person and just like chatting with everyone.
I collect these. I've got like over 50 or 60 of them. This is a split paint job. Paul, who makes these, is famous for split paint jobs, so by the time I got called, this was still available. I was really stoked. And this guy is a Microman tribute. So he's got the chrome head, it's got a chrome fish butt. I really like boss carrions, and I have a bunch of them. So yeah, there you go. Pretty stoked. Summerslime, hot score.
These people are eating tacos and talking to each other about their recent finds or what they're up to in their lives and catching up with each other. A lot of these people, they talk to each other online every day, but they only get to see each other once every 6 months. So it's just kind of getting together. That's actually the fun part, I think, you know. And then when it's over, we like to look in each other's bags and see, like, well, what did you get? Because, you know, as the numbers are called, like the first person goes up, there's a large group of people who, like, they all want that one specific thing, and there's only one of them. So, you know, once the next person comes, and then by the time you get down to like 60, 70, 80 people, it's like they all have these like bags of treats, and it's like, well, what did you come away with, and do you feel, you know, do you have that excitement about it and stuff? And sometimes it ends up where people are trading, or, you know, they're muling for other people, so they got something, you know, that once they get home, they're going to ship it to their friend that couldn't make it.
002 459 053.
Oh, she got it.
Well, we decided, you know, to do extra raffles, and each artist can donate something, and actually that all kind of accumulates into paying for the event. So if people are willing to take that risk to get, say, a test shot or anything, and it helps to promote the event, then why not, you know? And that's basically what that's all about. I don't want people stressing out. And Summerslime has always been about a good vibe environment where people at least come away with something. Come away with talking to friends, or coming away to exchanging information, or networking, or just having a good time. So that's what it's all about in the bottom line of everything. Friendship and love and fairness and a good environment. Because a lot of shows now are just simply stress. And I don't think people that buy your product deserve that.
I love doing this. This is what I wait for, you know, like in different times, and we get, all of us are crazy about going to Japan to see where our toys are made and like meet the makers over there and stuff. And now it's just like, this is our summer vacations, you know. John drove across the states in his van to be here for this, and for 2 hours sell a box of toys. We could all easily sell all this stuff at home with no fuss,
but we're all here because we love seeing each other. I love toys, and I love being around people when they're passionate about things, because it just makes everything so much more kinetic, and you just get to enjoy talking to people about the stuff they love and the stuff you love. And it's like anytime I can have person-to-person contact with people about this kind of stuff, I'm never going to say no to that. And then the fact that it's, you know, with these guys, and I love all these guys, just makes it that much easier.
The coolest part about coming is the community, the friends that I made in this community, and just the vibe being around all these people, especially in a backyard of a generous person. You know, it's fun.
So here we are, great night, good people, great music. I get my friends to DJ. We want a good, comfortable environment, and we know how to do it. And I hope everyone feels that way, because we work hard to make this happen. It takes weeks of preparation, but we always feel great afterwards. And before, maybe a little nervous, but you know, I think times change. But everyone keeps showing us the love, so we keep loving back. It's a lot of hard work. I stress out within myself. I'm learning to deal with my own stresses. You know, that's all on me. But you make it great. You all make it so fun and worth it to me to do these events and keep it going and keeping the self-me scene alive and original and fresh, and showing that artists can work together quite comfortably and enjoy each other's company and enjoy each other's pieces as well. I think that's what we need a little more of in the community, and I think that's the message we're trying to really send. Is like, it's all inclusive, you know. It's, you show up to support it, be a part of it. That's what we want. We want us to all get along, and we want to work together, because that we want to inspire each other, and that's where all this work comes from. The need for inspiration.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. I appreciate all of you very much. We do. We all appreciate you.
My favorite thing to collect are Diecast robots. I'm so drawn to them. Nobody needs to explain to me who they are, what they do, and how they transform or combine. For me, they're perfect. I'm all in, gold as old. My name is Pilo Crisostomo, and I work for a communications company, the old format type. They are the pre-cell phone communication devices, aka pagers, and yes, they are still around and are being used by the health sectors, first responders, nursing homes, restaurants, and etc. My collection mostly consists of Diecast super robots, figures, and vehicles. I also collect 1/6 figures, some Sofubi, some Star Wars, and some Lego. Majority of my collection comprises of super robots, which comes in 3 sizes. They are DX, mid-size, and SD. At first, the DX lines are the one I'm focused on. It's my perfect and ideal size. It all changed when I got my hands on some Bio-Robo and a Dynaman. They are as fascinating as the DX, only on a smaller scale. I collect because I simply love toys. It's been a passion of mine since I was a kid. It's my recharge. After a long day of work, I can stare at them for quite a time and they never fail to bring me a smile. I can say they're my therapy, they're my static enjoyment. I remember every weekend, I think I was 9 or 10, normally play with my 3 brothers after me. We somewhat reenact robot fight scenes. I have a Down syndrome brother and he loves playing to portray the kaiju. He would chase us around the room, growling and making these kaiju faces. Funny, we get so scared of him playing his part. And that's another reason why I collect. It's because of fun, happy memories. I used to work for a company where I create detailed system drawings. wiring details, and build instructions. I used to model my documentation on how to transform and combine DX robots. And it never fails. I always get a pat on the back after every presentation, and that's another reason why I connect for inspiration. When I was growing up, and these kind of toys are really expensive. You know, you can actually pay for tuition fee based on how much they are selling. So the only thing that I can afford are this kind of stickers, and they are readily available. I would save up my lunch money for that day, and once I get out of school, I buy this, and there's a ton of them, different kinds. And once I'm home, I normally start creating the one that I normally want. For example, Voltes 5, that's the one that's we're really in, especially Filipino. That's the one that we are really into. I would create my own Voltes 5. All I have are those white, shiny poster boards that the soda company would leave on my mom's store that I pull out. Then I start making my own.
So you would use the stickers as reference, as visual
Yes,
reference, and
yes.
then build the actual
Yes.
robot out of paper.
That is correct. I have been collecting little stuff since I was a kid. Mid-2000, my wife gave me a Voltes 5 DX for my birthday. I was ecstatic. I have been wanting one for as long as I can remember. That day when it came in the mail, I was tunnel vision. All I can do is stare at it. I did not even help with chores. That's all I did for the whole day. Furthermore, I discovered eBay, where you can buy anything. And there it all began, and this happened. I found out the Godaikin line offered more than Voltes 5. I was hooked to all of them. It's just like an explosion of the universe of super robots. They came in all shape and sizes. I would have never imagined the abundance, each with their own storyline, their own uniqueness. Anything that I ever imagined before were already turned into an animation, better yet into a toy. But even though their storyline are all different, it all boils down into one single plot: alien invaders. And mankind's only hope rely on a number of young heroes piloting their super transforming combining machine to save Earth and mankind. My simple method of displaying my collection are as follows: tallest at the back, smallest to the front. You know, standard for everyone. Then, they need to be symmetrical, balanced on both sides. They need to be cascading, just like an amphitheater. And as much as possible, enough spacing to show the individual robot behind it. Plus, for me, I need a lot of patience because sometimes I need days to have that perfect balance that my eyes are looking for. I'm Pinoy. It's given. Voltes 5, paborito ko. It's my favorite. It's a given. When it comes to toy line, there are a lot of them. Each one offers their own creativity and ingenuity. But for the vintage line, I normally look for Poppy, Bullmark, Clover, Takatoku, Takemi, Nakajima, Nomura Toys, etc. And for the new toy line, Solo Chogokin, King Arts, Lego, Medicom, Evolution Toys, Pypro, Hot Toys, etc. I can't say I have a favorite toy era. I will always be amazed and be excited to get my hands on vintage and new ones, as long as they transform, they combine with all their bells and whistles. A bell piece in my collection, I guess I don't have any, because it's always hard for me to let them go, even the small ones. They are all valuable to me. I have some friends that came over some years ago. They saw my collection and they were impressed. And one even asked me, what do they do? To them, they're just toys. But for me, they're my collection. They're priceless. So it all depends on who's looking. I'm always on the look for Mikanda or Mikander, just like this, and Diabaron, both made by Bullmark. They have a certain appeal that, for me, so irresistible. My goal for my collection, actually I haven't thought about it. It never slipped my mind. I'm just enjoying myself with my ensemble and sharing my passion with my family and friends. I know my kids sees what I have been up to for as long as they can remember. They even coined our yearly small eyeball gathering, PiloCon. That's so funny. I hope in the near future, their nerdy weird dad's madness will inspire them in whatsoever shape or form.
I probably most identify as a collector in like the broad sense. I kind of collect anything that catches my eye, and obviously I focus on boys' toys from the 70s and 80s and girls' toys from the 50s and 60s. But in addition to toys, I also collect housewares, I collect vintage science fiction and fantasy novels, I collect vintage t-shirts. Anything that catches my eye and kind of displays a interesting design sensibility or creative energy, I guess. My name's Jillian. I'm probably best described as a multidisciplinary artist. I have a history in fashion design, and in more recent years have switched to focusing more on housewares and textile arts. What I do for work is I do props and production design for film and TV. I put myself through college selling vintage clothing, and at the time I was just going to the thrift stores all the time, and that was kind of in the heyday of eBay as a resource for selling vintage clothes. So I kind of like got into the heavier collecting scene at that time, just kind of like constantly thrifting and finding toys along with all of the clothes I would find. And that kind of led me on a path to get more into fashion design and just the creative arts field. Why I collect is kind of a loaded question. I think the short answer is probably that it makes me happy, and I think for many of us collectors, that's probably the primary reason. But just coming from a designer perspective, I just really enjoy surrounding myself with kind of constant reminders of good quality and creative design, and I think that's really heavily reflected in the toys. I feel like this sounds pretty cliche, but I've honestly been collecting my whole life. I was the kind of child that wanted everything from a single toy line instead of like a variety of different things. So I would get like pretty heavily obsessed with one type of toy. So for instance, when I was about 10, that was kind of like the heyday of Tamagotchis or like Gigapets, and I still have this wad of Gigapets and Tamagotchis. There's like 20 or 30 of them. And I don't know why, like what on earth a little kid would do with that many digital pets. Like you had to feed them. They weren't like passive toys. You had to take care of them. So I was thinking about this yesterday, in fact, and remembered that I made this friend in my elementary school whose mom had like a Costco card, and I had heard that it was cheaper to get Tamagotchis at Costco. So I would kind of collect all my like allowance or food money for school and just kind of keep it, and like once I collected enough, I would give it to her and she would go to Costco for me and buy me like a Tamagotchi over the weekend and bring it back, and I would just have a new one. But I kind of crack up about that still, just like, oh, this is my original collection. It's just this freaking wad of Tamagotchis. And I did the same thing with Polly Pockets. I just wanted every single Polly Pocket I could possibly have, and I would set them up like along the baseboard of my bedroom, and they're like kind of perfect configuration, just like what looked the most visually pleasing. And I would play with them, of course, but I would always kind of reset them back to what just kind of displayed the nicest, and I just kind of like always left them out and looking as pretty as possible. I was born in '87, and so we were kind of in the 90s was like the coming of age or something, and that was when Beanie Babies kind of became a big thing, and like the collectability of stuff was like so high, and I feel like it was such a big part of popular culture at that time. And I don't know, I've been kind of thinking about how that affected me and potentially other toy collectors, if that just like really got in our brains, this like collecting mentality, and if that has anything to do with why we collect to this day. So my favorite era as it relates to toys is different for like boy toys and girl toys. Like I mentioned, I'm 50s, 60s, and some 70s for girls, I think is really solid. And then 70s, 80s for boys. I'm pretty into 3 3/4 is definitely my format. So I think that's best represented in like early mid 80s. My favorite thing to collect, I'm really into anthropomorphic anything. I also really love devils and like little demonic representations, so I heavily collect any kind of little like red devil or something like that. There's some franchises that I like to collect too because I'm so into science fiction and fantasy. There's toy lines that are associated with certain franchises that I'm a big fan of. I'll pick that stuff up as well. The way I display my toys and just my collectibles in general, I was raised by a Mormon housekeeper, so being super organized and tidy is kind of super burned in my brain. But on top of that, my space is kind of a multi-use space. I just live in a 1-bedroom apartment, so I kind of have to be able to display my collection in a way that is cohesive with the rest of my house. So within just like the overall layout, I have things organized by type of toy, and if I have an army build, I keep those all together. Some things are organized by franchise, and other things like what I have behind me is kind of my miscellaneous toys, but those are of course displayed by color. It's probably pretty obvious to everyone that I'm a little bit of a organized person. So I have a couple favorites. I think obviously my rubber face collection is pretty massive, and one of my favorites, primarily Rushton rubber face dolls. I absolutely adore them. Just hitting on the anthropomorphic animal thing, I think they kind of hit every good possible thing. They're all hand painted. They're just absolutely stunning. I think it's such a great line too, just from a design perspective. One face can be on different bodies, they have different colors. There's so much range and variety within the lines and with the knockoff lines that copied the Rushtons. I kind of like to think of them as the 1950s girl toy version of Battle Beast, and which I also heavily collect. So those are definitely some of my favorites. For action figures, I love Dragon Riders of the Styx is definitely one of my favorites. I army build the Demon. I can't get enough of them. I think it's almost a perfect toy line, and just thinking about them and how, first of all, like how that got into a toy store and who, like all the decisions that got made in putting this like Demon line and marketing those to little kids. And then the fact that those toys made it through Satanic Panic to like be in perfect condition in my house. Like, they're really fragile toys. Like, I don't know how they made it. I don't know why they were made, but I'm so happy they were made, and that they just bring me so much joy now. I think it's such a great toy line. And then like other anthropomorphic creature type lines, I really love the rock bugs and things. I think are amazing. I really love Bugmen of Insecta. I really love food fighters. A lot of these lines that were kind of just one-off, probably like some KB Toys random thing that just have kind of stood the test of time. I really love them. In terms of most valuable pieces, again, it would probably be some of my rushed ends. I know like every toy, pretty much everything I guess, went kind of bonkers over the last few years, especially since quarantine. Prices kind of went totally wild, but I would say my most valuable rushed end is probably the octopus and any of the sea friends. They're pretty rare and sought after. They got pretty expensive. I feel super lucky that I was able to get them when I did. And then for action figures, it's so hard to say because prices have been fluctuating so much. I would think my Alien is pretty valuable, and my Life doll is like a pretty high ticket item. The Kraken obviously is one of them, but actually recently someone told me my Shogun Godzilla was an advanced toy for me, and I don't know if the price went up on those or if he was just being a weird dude, but you know. So my Grail of personal value is probably one of the Polly Pockets. For some reason wasn't ever able to purchase any of the Fairy Lights sets, so when I became an adult I purchased that for myself, and now it lives with all the sets that I had as a kid. Like I mentioned a minute ago, some of my Rushton's, like I got into collecting Rushton's because I'm really into H.P. Lovecraft, and again, like the anthropomorphic animals is like a big thing for me. All of my Battle Beast army builds are sea creatures, so when I first discovered Rushton's, I noticed that there was a line of sea creatures. I got those pretty early on, and those have been one of the top pieces that have skyrocketed in value. I would say another personal grail is I have not an actual branded Rushton, it's like an offline, but a rubber face devil that is just like hitting a lot of notes for me. Another personal grail for me, just because I love Lord of the Rings so much, a newer acquisition, which is the Knickerbocker Lord of the Rings Ringwraith. I'm so happy to finally have him in my collection, and that kind of hits like personal value and monetary value notes. I'm 100% a completist. Yes, 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 yes. Everything must be complete. That's actually kind of part of the joy of hunting for me, because I mean, we all know as collectors, oftentimes you find a figure and then you kind of like get to continue the hunt by trying to find all the accessories. I even do it for my army builds. Again, with the Dragon Riders, just I have the Army of the Demons and I'm still hunting down some of the pieces to complete all of those too. Being a completist is kind of a fun way for me to continue the hunt after I found the piece itself. So the deal with the army building, I know it's a little contentious among collectors, being an army builder or not. I kind of just started doing it for fun, and I tried to army build things that were easy for me to find. So I think my first army build was the Gamorrean guards, because at the time I was finding them for like $5, and they're easy to find, they were cheap, and they would be an army logically, like in the world of Star Wars. So it just made sense for me to collect those, and I think they look nice displayed together. Since then, it's kind of been a little bit slower in finding them, and as my collections got bigger, I've become more of a stickler of only picking things up with accessories for some of my larger armies. But again, same kind of mentality for army building the Dune Sardaukar. It just makes sense to me that they would be part of a larger army instead of just one figure. And I think they display nicely together. I was able to complete at least one figure from the entire Dune line very recently, and I found my set of Dune figures at a convention in like Sacramento, California, ages ago. I've had these figures forever. Anyone that collects that line knows that finding accessories is pretty hard. And I just recently completed those. So yes, I have a complete set of each figure. I maybe, out of my army build, this Sardaukar, I probably have 2 complete. But it can be quite difficult to complete some of these things. Like right now I'm working on, I think there's a few pieces of Dragon Riders that I'm missing 1 or 2. Like I have the piece, several of those figures have repeat accessories. So I have everything, just not enough for each one. So there's a couple pieces I'm still missing from that. Public perception, I guess, is kind of something I've been thinking about a lot with collecting, because I feel like you get, or I at least have gotten pretty insulated with my collection with sharing it online, because there's this huge community of us that really like it and understand what it is and what we're doing and why we do it. But it's been coming up for me recently that the way someone else coming into my house, or friends or family or clients even, like as I mentioned, this is a multi-use space, and I do work where I, will have to do fittings for people or whatever. So just to circle back a little bit, that's kind of like why I've set up my space in the way that it is. So it's functional and like presented as nicely as possible, because most people that come over, or that I know personally, are not collectors and do kind of have a little bit of like funniness when they first interact with my collection. I would say it's pretty misunderstood, especially the rubber face dolls. Most people think they're pretty creepy, and I honestly don't see it. I've never thought they were creepy. I always have seen them as like legitimate pieces of art, and same for all of my collection. I think it's beautiful, and I feel like from, again, like an artistic and design state of mind, I don't know how you don't see that. Yeah, it is a little funny when people that don't collect discover this part of my personality, and that's kind of tough too, because I feel like it's such a deep expression of who I am as a person. Not to be too much of a bummer, but it's like kind of funny to see that it's so easily misunderstood. So again, I guess that's why like having the online community is such a big deal. It's like, wonderful people will interact with the collection and give you some positive feedback for something that you would be doing anyway, despite all like just not totally mainstream aspects about it. I am obviously trying to complete my Knickerbocker Lord of the Rings collection. That is going to be super hard, I think, but I'm ready for it. It's always nice to want something, so I'm not totally bothered by having some pieces that are like hard won. There is one that I'm kind of bitter about that I haven't been able to find, that I've been looking for a very long time. One of the Rushtons I have been hunting for since I first started collecting that line several years ago, and it's called Goldie Fish. It's just a little goldfish with a rubber face. I have the rest of the Sea Friends collection. I cannot for the life of me find that thing. Seen it come up a few times, and especially over the last year, it's just like bonkers out of range in terms of price for me, which is fine. I can be patient and hopefully it'll come back down. But also my Dragon Riders, I'm missing one piece. It's like a mystery action dragon. I've literally never seen it intact. I've seen 1 or 2 over the years that are broken or like completely missing a part. I've never seen it complete. And by complete, I mean with its wings, like a major part of its body missing. I need it. Hopefully I find it one day. So for a while, I had this goal of having I just got it into my head that it would be fun if you could have like a percentage of the world's population of like Gamorrean guards, for example. And because like I said, they used to be so cheap, and I thought that could maybe be feasible. Like if you could get, even if it was like 0.5% or 1% of like all of them, that would be super fun. But thinking about it, there's probably like millions of those, right? So like 1% of a million is like an obscene amount of those guys, but that's probably not going to be a thing now that they're super expensive. But who knows? I imagine I'll be collecting for a long time. Maybe it'll happen.
I'm John Tracy, and I collect a lot of stuff. I collect toys, comics, art, posters, 1/6, a lot of hot toys, sideshow, custom pieces from people who work in the movie monster makeup industry. I've always loved comic books, and that's really what got me into it, collecting comic books, and I read my comic books. I'm not one of the guys that just bought them as like an investment. I actually like to read comic books. And then from that, there was toys, and I'd start buying those. And then I think everybody kind of takes that break around high school time or right when they get out of high school. So I definitely had that. And then I started picking up the toys heavily again when NECA started releasing a lot of horror stuff. So I go to Frank & Sons and go to there's a lady there called the NECA lady. And she really got me into collecting again. And then from there, it went to Hot Toys. Man, I've been collecting, again, since I was a little kid. I mean, when I was really young, I did the He-Man stuff, and then recently I've gotten into Sofubi. The last few years I've been doing comic book art. I just love the, just collecting and the communities that you get to meet now, especially online, with pretty much every type of collectible. The types of characters I collect when it comes to Hot Toys, I collect Marvel, I collect DC. I do like the stuff that there's not a lot of merchandise for. Like right now, I really like the Back to the Future stuff. Aliens, Predators, stuff like that. That I usually like a lot more than just the comic book stuff. With the soft vinyl, the stuff that got me into it was actually Instagram. There's a lot of custom guys that again are making horror movies that just don't have any merchandise. Like House, Split Second, things with like Rutger Hauer, some anime stuff. A lot of them did a lot of resin figures, and then they started doing Sofubi, so then I just started getting into that. A lot of the stuff that I wanted to collect with the customized stuff is horror. Living in LA, there's a lot of people who work in the movie industry, who work in monster makeup. And honestly, the stuff that scared me as a kid is the stuff that I like to collect now. So anything like that and anything that just doesn't have any licensed merchandise is usually what I go after. Anything that scared me when I was a kid, for some reason, I want to have it now. The favorite horror movie franchise? There's so many you can go through. There's, Halloween, Michael Myers, Jason. Now I think Halloween's probably the best all-around slasher, but I think if I had to watch every single movie in a franchise, Friday the 13th is one of the ones that I can watch all the movies and not get sick of them. They're all they're all kind of the same, but I think Friday the 13th is the easiest one to watch all of them. When it comes to displaying stuff, it's kind of just where it'll fit. I do like moving stuff around, and luckily working, merchandising jobs when I was younger kind of helps me with that. But it's just, where it'll fit, when I can move around. Some stuff goes into storage if I can, and then now it's almost seasonally. I'm in a horror mood, I bring out more horror stuff. If I'm in a Sofubi mood, I put more of my Sofubi stuff out. I mean, some of my favorite stuff, I wouldn't say it's a toy line, but it's Pennywise. Like that movie, the original one, when I was a kid, it came out on VHS, and I would only watch the first tape where it was the kids versus Pennywise. That terrified me as a kid. Tim Curry as Pennywise was frightening, so that's one of my favorite things to collect. I have a large collection of Pennywise stuff, and it's not just action figures, just collectibles. That's something I even bought pops of. It's just something, if I see Pennywise, I want it. For the eras that I like, I'd probably say, maybe even like 10 years ago, just when Hot Toys was first coming out, that really got me back into collecting. I loved He-Man, and I liked Ninja Turtles when I was a kid. Back then I couldn't get to the Toys R Us as often as I wanted to when I was a kid. I just didn't have the money or the means. And now I can pretty much get whatever I want. And Hot Toys was really the one that brought me back into collecting, and a high quality figure, and they display well. And the good thing about those that I like too is like, sometimes you get sick of a statue or certain things, but those, you go through a cabinet, you repose everything, and it feels brand new again. The most valuable pieces of my collection, again, because I collect so many different things, I have the first appearance of the Sentinels, which is X-Men 14, that I got signed by Stan Lee. I mean, it's not the most expensive comic, but it's just a memory that I have of that meeting Stan Lee and having something he created that I got him to sign. When it comes to some of the horror stuff that I collect, I have a Dracula bust by EFX life designs. And it's just, the detail on it is insane. It's pretty limited, and it's just a great statue. When it comes to hot toys, my favorite one is still, well, it's actually not a hot toy, it's an Enterbay figure. The Enterbay Leon. It was the first one that I bought, first 1/6 scale figure, and that it was just such a unique license that there's nothing for that I had to have it. I mean, I like that there's some of the things in my collection that are worth money, but it's more of the experience and meeting people. And again, the EFX busts that I have by Darren, those are great because I ordered them from him. He's he's an artist. When I went to go pick him up, like I hang out with the guy, I talk to the guy, and then I buy his art. Those are always good memories, and that's more important to me than the monetary value of something. Where I shop mostly is I used to go to Frankenson's a lot, not so much since the pandemic. But a lot of the stuff I get online, or I meet people on Instagram. A lot of the custom stuff is strictly through Instagram. I wouldn't consider myself a completist, no. I don't. If I miss something, I usually, I don't have to have everything. I have a lot of Marvel hot toys, but I might be missing a Vision. It's not something that keeps me awake at night, so no. Family and friends, and what they think about my collecting, it's different. I mean, my dad, I would say, doesn't understand it. My sister loves it. My girlfriend thinks it's cool, but that's what she says. I don't know if she actually thinks that. On my wish list, that's a tough one. Actually, watching some of your videos, some of the old hot toys that I missed out on that I can't believe I did was the female Predator, the Machiko. That's a good one. One of the early comic books that I remember reading was the original Aliens vs. Predator trade. And then even the Chris Reeve Superman, that's another one, again, because there's so much new Marvel and so much new DC that I want some of the old stuff again from when I was a kid, and that's one that's been missing from my collection for a long time. Overall goal for me collecting, I'd say no. I just enjoy it. I enjoy the communities a lot, especially when the pandemic happened. It's just, you need some type of, way to connect to people, and collecting is good with that, and it's good, we're kind of the first generation of collectors that had social media. So it's pretty interesting. I just, just like collecting, and I dabble in so many different things that, I like everything.
Welcome to Creature Vision by Creature Bazaar. Refreshments are available in the lobby. And please, keep our theater clean by disposing of trash in specified containers. And remember, gift certificates are available for any special occasion. Enjoy the show.
And I wanted to thank everybody for coming out. All the different makers from all around the world. It's really awesome that we're all, able to have everybody come out, and then all of you guys come to see all of our insanity.
So we're we're in the Frida Theater in downtown Santa Ana, where we had hosted our first ever Creature Vision event. Creature Vision is a multimedia sort of experience that we did with Unbox Industries and Punk Drunkers. From time to time, I would actually rent the theater out to do various screenings here. And when it came time to do Creature Vision, there was no other theater I wanted to do it within. This whole event was sort of like a pre-designer con sort of experience for a lot of the people that were coming into town. Part of it was trying to give a shared experience amongst all the fandom, like the core fandom for the soft vinyl toys that we all produce. It was a very interesting day. I'd say that like when we came to set up the theater, we went earlier to set up our spot at the convention center in Anaheim, broke out from there, and then came here to set up. And it was interesting to walk up and down the street and sort of see a lot of people kind of within the area that I knew from the soft vinyl toy fandom, just kind of pouring in. And then as the day went on, as we were setting up, more and more people were just lining up in front of the theater. I had known that the event had sold out quickly, but I don't think you ever really know. Like when I looked up and saw everybody, I was kind of astonished to see how many people were actually here. Creature Vision in its essence, the idea really came from trying to watch something but then kind of being a little not fully attentive, so you're just flipping channels. And that was kind of the basic ideas, but let's say every channel was playing something interesting. And in this case, you know, I took it upon myself to sort of like do a little re-edit of, you know, the show for everybody. You know, that it being a movie that I thought everybody had seen, but apparently there's a few in the audience that hadn't seen it before, so their version of for the first time to seeing mine. You know, but it was just really fun to be able to get together with all the other Creature Bazaar guys and sort of find a lot of our favorite clips that were on the internet and just sort of place them within. And along with that, film special things and create special things. I could be totally wrong, but I think we made 4 commercials in total. Oh no, we actually did 5 different commercials in total, and they were all products that were either like a specialty item for Designer Con or things that were being released for the first time at Designer Con. The first one we had actually shot was a commercial for the Hell Robo, a toy that we did with Blitzkrieg Toys in a sort of like iconic Shogun Warrior style colorway that came packaged in a box. Through the editing process, when I was watching tons and tons of vintage toy commercials, and it got to the point of being able to break them down and just thinking about it and being like, well, I can actually shoot segments like this in my backyard, and not necessarily doing it with a super high production value, but just sort of like cruddy enough where it's kind of funny. You know, we shot that actually on a day, which was pretty crazy because it actually rained on set. And we basically had umbrellas up to protect the lights and the camera and everything. I had to go out and get like fireworks to kind of like shoot at the toys. It was pretty fun. It was a really great one. And then we did a commercial for our friend Michael Scottum. He had developed a trio of characters he called the Crushers, and we did a Three Stooges style commercial. We worked with the legendary toy maker Bullmark to release an officially licensed Subaru Iconogon figure that came with a Creature Bazaar shirt in a special Creature Bazaar colorway. And that was really fun, and that was a stop motion style commercial. The toy maker Headlock had actually produced a mascot toy of me, and so I did a little commercial for that as well. It was kind of a huge undertaking now that I think about it, the things that we all kind of banded together as a group to kind of produce. And then many of the individual makers that were participating in Creature Vision had also made little clips. Mutant Vinyl Hardcore, for instance, whenever there was one scene would cut to the next and there's a little bit of static, you'd actually see a Ghostbusters logo that he actually produced for his release of figures. Barely Human Art and Candy Bolton produced their own little shorts. Buwana Spoons produced little short clips as well that were really funny. So everybody kind of had their own little bit in the show.
Well, what made you want to come to Creature Vision?
Well, it was actually like more of the secretness of it. Like, you know, I wanted to know what was coming out, what was going to be played. Like, it's just like the mystery of it. Like really kind of turned me on about the whole event, and then also a chance to get a piece. Of course, I need more of these. This is amazing. Like the whole vibe, everything is like it's unique. It's what we need right now, especially post-pandemic.
What's really neat is that it's a movie, and then you get to have a number assigned to you. As you watch the movie, they do the lottery, and then you pick the toy that you want.
We were just expecting to go in just to see some cool Sofubi figures, some punk druckers, hopefully to meet some punk drucker that we're excited to meet him and see him. See a cool video.
So I definitely appreciate being an attendee because there's just so much work in putting an event together. So from like their editing with the toys, like the execution, it's like well done. It's a great job.
Because I don't really know what I'm doing a lot of the time, I didn't want to promise people a thing if I didn't know exactly how it would work out in the end. And so I felt like giving no information and surprising everybody would be sort of part of the fun, because I was sort of creating something that, in essence, something that I would want to attend. And I felt that within the soft vinyl toy community, there had been a void of like a group event where it wasn't just about coming and buying something and then running away, essentially, and then like taking a photo of it and just putting it on your shelf. I wanted to do something where it engaged with people, and it gave something for people to talk about and be excited about, along with being able to get some really great pieces for your collection.
Welcome, and thank you all for coming to Creature Vision by Creature Bizarre.
The creation of Cameo kind of led to some very funny events within it, whether it's the intro from Ernie Hudson or, you know, a really beautiful moment and something that I think, I mean, really is part of Creature Bizarre's core is just getting Ernie Hudson to sing Happy Birthday to our friend Buwana. Because Ghost is one of his favorite movies.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Buwana. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
So thank you for coming, everybody. I've been working on a stop-motion horror fantasy film for 6 years.
It was really cool to have Skinner have the premiere of his the trailer for his Shrine of the Abomination stop-motion film. He had sent me so many clips of it that I had assumed that a ton of people had seen it. But when I realized it was just through our personal message exchanges, that's how I had seen everything, we kind of realized, no, like, more people need to see this to get excited for his Kickstarter that's coming out in February. Our friend JJ Villard had provided us a lot of clips from the various animation work that he had done. That was really amazing. And I mentioned before, our friend Eric Fountain produced actual Creature Bizarre animated clips, which were really amazing. That was huge to me. That helped give a little production value. Those are probably the highlights. It's weird for me to talk about the success of it because it's sort of like narcissistic, because I felt, I don't know if it could have gone better for us. It's hard for me because I'm not the type of guy that likes to truly like bask in it all that much. I kind of move from one project to the next. It honestly felt really great walking around DesignerCon and hearing people talk about the event and the show and everything, that have our inbox flooded with this, I mean, more than a toy release, in all honesty, of like, are we going to do another one? When's the next one? And whatever. And I can safely say there will be more. I don't know when, I don't know what, but there's going to be more. I enjoy it. I think everybody in the Creature Bizarre crew likes it. All the international people coming in, the people from all across the country. It was sort of like a really beautiful moment that we can all kind of share together. You know, if we never do another one again, it's still something that I think the toy collecting community will probably not forget too soon. the overwhelming amount of positivity I got just reinforced my love for the community.
Hi, I'm Brian Levant, the writer and producer of ancient TV series like Happy Days, Mork and Mindy, and my long-running Leave It to Beaver revival. I'm also a film director whose credits include the original Beethoven, the Flintstone movies produced by Steven Spielberg, Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Spy Next Door with Jackie Chan, and a pair of wonderful live-action CGI Scooby-Doo films that were made for the Cartoon Network. I'm also a college professor teaching at the University of Arizona and the University of New Mexico. And finally, after 11 years, the proud author of My Life in Toys, which chronicles both my career and my collecting habit. I'm so proud of this book that I did with my brother-in-law, Joe Pellegrini, who's one of the top tabletop photographers in the country. We spent 11 years photographing and writing this super-sized coffee table book the size of a coffee table, but within it over 1,100 original color photographs spanning so many of my interests. In My Life in Toys, I tried to chronicle the expansive world of my collecting, which is so integrated with my career that one could never imagine when I was watching the premiere of Happy Days in January 1974 that I would end up spending over 8 years on and off with the series, and that I would collect an impressive collection of Fonzie motorcycles, action figures, now Funko Pops, color forms, games, an unbelievable amount of merchandising from that show as there was from so many of my other projects. For instance, the Flintstones, you can see the pervasive influence that it's had on my collecting and my career. But you could have never imagined being 8 years old watching the premiere of the Flintstones that one day you would take the creative helm under the supervision of one of the finest filmmakers who's ever walked the earth and have an opportunity to make a holiday tentpole extravaganza of Hanna-Barbera's crown jewel. I collect so many things. My interest originated in childhood, so many things that were developed long after. I collect things because I love them. I am not a classic collector. I don't collect particularly for condition in the box. I display things very openly and in large groups, and that way you become much more aware of the color and the combinations and the uniqueness of the items and the multiplicity of them. And for instance, in the Flintstones, before style guides became very prevalent, most of the toys were designed and made overseas. And in many places like Japan, they did not even air the Flintstones. So it was really people's interpretation of the characters in creating the toys, and that's what gives them a unique flavor that's more akin today to fan art, which is more an individual's perception of characters. And like I said, there is a tremendous integration from my collecting and my career that, for instance, my film Jingle All the Way was a film about finding the hottest Christmas toy of the year and the search for it. And in doing so, I had the opportunity with the wonderful art department and people like Tim Flattery and my storyboard artist Daryl Henley to create an entire line of toys, which now sit in my shelves in Funko Pop. Last year released a whole line of Jingle toys, including reproducing the original 14-inch talking Turbo Man that was originally manufactured by Tiger Toys in 1996 and failed to fly off the shelves as we had anticipated. And now those are collector's items. And strangely enough, on the 25th anniversary of Jingle All the Way, Turbo Man became the hottest toy in America. I don't have want lists. I don't do this for financial gain in any way. It's much more deep-rooted in expressing my affection for these characters, these shows, these institutions. I am a DC guy. By the time I was 10 years old, there was still no Marvel. There was no Spider-Man when I was a kid, so I'm deeply embedded in the DC universe, but my collecting is really limited to Superman. Always loved the George Reeves series growing up. It's one of my earliest memories, is watching what undoubtedly was a rerun of the very first episode of Superman, Superman versus the Mole Man. But there is such a wealth of products featuring the Man of Steel. It's great when the collecting continues, even past what normally would be a character's expiration date, like Hulk Hogan has been canceled, but they're still making beautiful Hulk Hogan figures, and I'm happy to get them. Hulk Hogan is an aberration. I never set out to collect Hulk Hogan, and I wanted to collect something I could just buy off the shelf and put on, put on mine. I guess I'm really from another generation. I'm someone who grew up in the 50s and into the 60s, and my choices are not exclusive to that era, but certainly it has provided the basis for what I do enjoy and collect. I collect a lot of robots because I think they're beautiful, not necessarily that I'm the biggest sci-fi fan. I have virtually no Star Wars, which today is the ultimate in collection. I was a kid who collected things, comic books, certain toys, things. I didn't so much collect them as there were things that I had to have growing up, that I demanded, that I own, and I've reacquired several of those objects. But I think I really began to collect in earnest when my then girlfriend, now wife of many, many years, moved in, and she brought along with her a pair of salt and pepper shakers that had been originally in the collection of Andy Warhol. And this started us buying salt and pepper shakers. And pretty soon we had hundreds. And that led to, okay, if you're buying Mr. Peanut salt and pepper shakers, or Cool Cigarette Penguin salt and pepper shakers, you get more of those figures, and it leads you into the advertising collectibles, led into more comic collectibles. Popeye was one of our first collections, and into things like the Flintstones, and gradually widening to include lunch boxes, thermoses, movie posters. You know, I was terribly influenced by the Marx Brothers in high school as I was evolving into a student filmmaker. And today I have many, many of their posters, artifacts, books about them, figures, a beautiful set of Dolls in the Box, a spin-off from their last film, 1951's Love Happy. They're so deeply rooted in my interests, my career, and my childhood. It all expresses itself through my collecting. I don't know that I have a favorite. I have favorite items. The 29-foot Wonder Bread sign from the factory in Detroit in the 50s that's in our backyard, and the 5-foot tall paper mache big boy figure that on nice days be rolled out on the restaurant's Van Nuys location that was established in 1951 and is no longer with us. That's not to say that the little tiny glow-in-the-dark light bulb that I grabbed from a gumball machine in elementary school doesn't mean as much to me as the giant, expensive items. The things that you love aren't bound by price. It's what it means to you personally. I'm very fortunate in that, unlike a lot of collectors I know, I'm not limited to a room, a shelf. Many of my friends, they're forced to keep their Batmobiles at their offices. Our whole house is filled to the brim with all of our different collections. And one of the reasons that I did the book was because there's no more room. And my joke is that I don't have room for another olive oil in my collections. And so it was time to take stock of it and why the things that appeal to me, the things that are related to my career, my childhood, my different spheres of influence are all reflected in that, and our entire house is a tribute to those passions. I think before licensed characters began at the turn of the century, the Yellow Kid was was a comic strip. And the comic strips became a dominant form of entertainment going into the movie era. From there, the base widened to include not just characters like Popeye, Toonerville Trolley, Blondie and Dagwood came around in the 20s, and in the 30s, the comic books started creating characters, Captain Marvel and Superman and Batman, and into the Silver Age and stuff. Then TV shows, and animated TV shows in particular, became focal points for merchandising for toy companies. And so the world of toys only expanded with the baby boom, with the ability to not just have toys that wound up, but toys that were electrified and walked and performed functions. Toys have constantly grown in that way. But the original, very simple metal, even lead figures and stuff, remain beautiful and unique. But you also have to appreciate the improvements that have been made over the decades. If I buy it, it's because I enjoy it. I'm not, trying to be the biggest, best collector of anything in the world, and I'm always amazed. When we moved into our house, there was a guy at the end of the block who had the most magnificent collections I have ever seen, who had a private museum in his office. I mean, it's kind of humiliating when you have thousands and thousands of pieces and you're not even the best collector on your block. The thing about writing the book is kind of a summation of collecting. And because I've accomplished everything that I wanted to do in that area, this is an illustration of that passion and of those hunts and of the accumulation and trying to show the beauty that I see in these objects and in these characters, and try and share my passion for them with an audience in the same way that I tell a story to share my passion about that story with an audience in my career. My goals have been satisfied. Just bought a Popeye toy this morning because it was beautiful and new and interesting, and I thought it would enhance my collection. But for the most part, my time as a collector is winding down because I have satisfied so many needs, so many desires to do more with it. And doing the book has allowed me to explore seeing it in different ways and sharing that appreciation to people who can't just come up to the house and walk around like you're doing today.